Reppenheim, the capital of the Antares Empire, stood as a testament to power and ambition. It was a sprawling metropolis, where the echoes of history mingled with the present-day hustle. The city held countless stories, some whispered in hushed tones, others celebrated in grand displays of imperial might. In the heart of a besieged city, chaos erupted as fiery shadows swept across the skyline. Towering beasts, their eyes aglow with a menacing hunger, rose from the depths, exhaling flames that devoured the night. Below, valiant warriors stood their ground, shields raised defiantly against the infernal onslaught. Their hearts pounded like war drums, each beat a testament to their courage. The air crackled with heat and desperation, as the line between victory and annihilation blurred amidst the dance of fire and fury. The cost of battle was staggering. 2 million lives were lost to a monstrous beast, summoned from some dark, unknown realm. Wide area magic and summoning had ravaged the land, leaving 200,000 dead and 300,000 wounded in their wake. Hope flickered amidst the devastation. The end was near for the Demon King, the one who had shattered the kingdom and tainted the world with evil. True warriors would purge the darkness, bringing an end to the reign of terror. Gratitude was owed to a wise majesty. The heart of Laibach Temple of Abyss pulsed with a dark energy. The call was issued, the demon's wicked actions would finally meet their end. A final strike was imminent. The order was given to herd Alex and Alan. It was time for the evil king to return to the shadows from whence they came. Identities blurred. Was it Demon King Leifenhart, or Emperor of Antares, Leifenhart Walled Antares? An empire was on the verge of collapse. A sword, Lodestar Cyrus, promised destruction. A sense of injustice lingered. This empire had been forged with difficulty. There was dismay at discarding a name like Antares, branding it instead as an empire of darkness. The natural order persisted, even in this blighted place. The sun still rose each morning, and the moon claimed the night. The land was now deemed the empire of darkness. Something was fading, giving way to the monstrous nature of what was to come. The idea that one possesses a devilish nature was dismissed as utter nonsense. The skills and strategies taught were merely adaptations of human tactics. A cynical observation noted that these tactics were simply a reflection of humanity's own historical actions. Confirmation arrived that all 4 heavenly kings had fallen. There was a quiet sense of pride in one's skill with a sword, hinting at a swift victory over a formidable orc. Disbelief hung heavy in the air as the death of the brave, great orc warrior was announced. Despite their savage appearance, orcs were portrayed as an innocent tribe that lived by hunting and gathering, untouched by betrayal. An offering of Ch6 Leifenhaft was made. Concern was voiced for the orcs' plight, as they were described as protectors of the weak, fighters against the strong, yet were being treated as monsters. The claim that they were filthy for not washing themselves was refuted as untrue. The fallen 4 heavenly kings were mourned, with a certain ugly troll implied to have paid a hefty price for his sins. Even Guru Matilda had died. The thought that trolls were perceived as ugly monsters was challenged, reframing them as a primitive tribe that was thankful for nature and sharpened their souls. The evil dwarf, a servant of the god of darkness, had also been defeated. The news spread that Magellan was dead, raising questions. The suggestion that Alfort, the god of waves, had become a god of darkness was met with outrage. There was contempt for the arrogance that branded any god other than Sayer and the 12 main deities as evil beings. Even the corrupt dark elf had been sent to the underworld, unable to withstand some unspecified power. The arrival of Jade, the magic mage of light, was announced. A challenge was posed, questioning the true intentions and demanding the exposure of true colors. The person was revealed to be the Demon King. The dark elf, consumed by darkness, was deemed beyond sympathy. The term dark elf was challenged. It was revealed her darker skin tone was due to living under the scorching sun in the wasteland after being driven from her home. Humans were blamed for cutting down the forest, prompting the banishment of a pure-blood high elf, which was deemed a grave injustice. Words seemed futile, inadequate to placate the legion of the deceased. A different approach was necessary, something beyond mere language to satisfy the spirits. Doubt arose about who would soothe the wrathful spirits of the various races. A stinging accusation of being abominable was hurled, laced with anger and disappointment. The air crackled with unspoken tension. The corruption of the beautiful Toulon was blamed on an evil power. If not for that influence, it was argued, they could have fulfilled their duties. Reasoning seemed impossible, words failing to bridge the chasm of animosity. Communication was useless. The other tribes were seen through a warped lens, dark races who dared to break free from enslavement. They were simply evil entities deserving only death, a view fueled by deeply ingrained prejudice. Acceptance washed over the figure and the willingness to embody a monstrous figure. Becoming the Demon King was a dark fate, but accepted nonetheless. A name was declared, Leifenhart. It was a declaration of self, a marker in the unfolding narrative. Once, there was an ordinary archmage, a source of power. But to humans, the other tribes were not considered equals, not seen as beings with the same intelligence and sentience. This prejudice formed the basis of a skewed worldview. Elves were regarded as beautiful, long-lived servants. Dwarves were merely slaves, valued for their digging skills. Orcs, strong but subservient, were also just servants. Trolls were reduced to ingredients, destined to become healing potions, their lives stripped of dignity and self-respect. The shock of discovering the secrets hidden within the forgotten culture was immense. An encounter forever changed the perception of the world. Everything was about to change. A deep dive into culture followed, a journey of understanding. Eventually, a combination of elven elemental magic and troll magic led to a historic breakthrough, the first ever use of 10th circle magic. The trade continued, values shifting constantly. Unable to simply watch, a rescue operation began, liberating other races from their enslavement. As the land embraced these newcomers and expanded, concealing the truth from human eyes grew increasingly difficult. Soon, humans invaded, sending forth knights armed with spears and swords to the front lines. Invasion followed invasion, the land constantly being ravaged, emptied, and resettled. Retaliation only began after being attacked, but inevitably led to conquering territories and the village's gradual growth. From this, the Antares Empire was born. Somehow, it led to founding a nation comprised of various other races. There was no hatred for humans, only the unwavering belief that all intelligent life possessed equal worth. Refraining from retaliating against the humans led to this outcome. Even as the Empire's people united in proclaiming the goodness of their lives, whispers insisted that these words were merely a sinister enchantment cast by a demon king. It was understandable that the armed forces, composed of races like ogres and goblins, might appear menacing. But the idea of slaughtering innocent people and comrades for such shallow reasons was utterly senseless. The priority was to defend the country. The details of a certain law were mentioned, along with a desire to remove it and establish a new foundation. A dismissive scoff echoed, questioning the legitimacy of being called a hero based solely on sword and magic skills. It was implied that neither had been truly mastered. Alex, the all-rounder, might sound impressive, but in the end, it was deemed just another label for a miscellaneous nobody. While heroic tales celebrate the warrior who survives to the end, the truth is that consistent, focused effort brings prosperity. It wasn't necessarily the strongest or most enduring who truly succeeded, it may have been the first king. While other aspects could be managed, dealing with this particular individual was a different matter entirely. There was an acknowledgement that this person was indeed the one who had relentlessly focused on a single task, digging that proverbial well. Taking him down wouldn't be a simple task, not by a long shot. The challenge ahead loomed large, filled with unseen obstacles and potential pitfalls. One could only steel themselves, preparing for a grueling confrontation where victory was far from guaranteed. Determination would be key to overcoming the inevitable resistance. One could only steel themselves, preparing for a grueling confrontation where victory was far from guaranteed. Determination would be key to overcoming the inevitable resistance. MK-04 stood activated, a formidable presence ready for whatever challenge was about to come. Victory over the Demon King Leifenhart had been secured during the tour, a monumental accomplishment. The idea that their original selves existed as slaves was unbearable, a concept too distressing to accept. Giving up was simply not an option. Desperation fueled the search for a solution, leading to the examination of a magic tool discovered within ancient ruins, the Eye of Space and Time. The artifact, known as the Koatanan, was so complex that even the forebear Circe couldn't decipher its true purpose. A desperate plan was forming, involving a space-time return spell, a perilous gamble with unknown consequences. The magic aimed to rewind time, a force that could potentially disrupt even the realm of Ceres, the god's province. Whether it would activate remained uncertain, but the urgency was palpable. Every possibility, no matter how slim, had to be seized. A voice screamed out, desperate to stop the unfolding events, warning of the danger of interfering with King Leifenhart. Survival was the only thing on their mind. The thought of dying here and now was unacceptable, a horrifying prospect that couldn't be allowed to materialize. The will to live burned fiercely, driving away any thoughts of succumbing to defeat. To materialize. The will to live burned fiercely, driving away any thoughts of succumbing to defeat. In the heart of chaos, an electric energy crackled around the warrior, their figure glowing with power as they braced against an unseen force. Light erupted violently around them, casting shards of brilliance that threatened to engulf the world. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and shards floated in the whirlwind, a testament to the raw, untamed magic spiraling outward. Dust swirled in shimmering vortices, and the air pulsed with a thunderous intensity that signaled the dawn of a primal storm. In a world suspended in tension, two warriors collide with unstoppable force, their energies clashing in a dance of light and fury. Time stretches, the air crackling with raw power as they spiral into a beautiful, chaotic storm. The ground trembles beneath them, the sky overwhelmed by their brilliance. As their power crescendos, the world blurs into an explosion of blinding light, leaving nothing but the echo of their epic confrontation. A soft sigh escaped. A wave of sensation washed over, a comforting sound, enveloping warmth, and a sense of profound coziness. Was this life? Could this be life still? A gasp of disbelief followed the realization of success. The space-time return spell, a puzzle even a genius couldn't decipher, had somehow worked despite a blind, reckless activation. Where exactly had the leap landed? Had such a place ever existed in the past? The surroundings were completely unfamiliar. A sudden jolt of curiosity arose. The most pressing question: how many years had passed? What age was reflected in this new reality? The need to understand the present circumstances grew stronger. Age was reflected in this new reality? The need to understand the present circumstances grew stronger. A surge of intimidating power coursed through, a sense of being able to evoke tears merely with physical presence. Curiosity flared, demanding to know the identity of the being inhabiting this form. The mind reeled, confronted with the life of a trainee deep within the mountains. The hands were rough, calloused from labor. This body was powerfully built, a testament to physical exertion and a far cry from the expected form. Confusion mounted. A wizard's strength should lie in magic, not sculpted muscles. The sight of six-pack abs sparked bewilderment and a touch of wry amusement, recalling younger days when charm alone was enough to captivate and even reduce elven women to tears, well into later years. A wave of confusion crashed over. This couldn't be right. When had his face become so sharp, his body so muscular? Had the regression gone wrong? Was he trapped in the wrong body? The questions tumbled over each other, a frantic search for answers in a distorted reflection. A grimace tightened his face. Was it possible this wasn't the past at all? Had he somehow remained in the same time, only to be thrust into a different body? He studied the unfamiliar features, dark brown, tough-looking eyes, and a stubbornly closed mouth. If this body was bigger and had a beak, he would look like the Fist King. You punk. The sun climbed high in the sky, bathing the land in its golden light, a silent witness to the unfolding drama. A sense of urgency filled the air. Why wasn't he outside? It was time to start the day with joy. A disbelieving voice cut through the air, laced with suspicion. "Who are you? A monster, huh? You look as if you've just seen me for the first time." A hesitant question hung in the air. There was genuine confusion, a desperate plea for understanding. "I'm asking because I really don't know. Didn't you use the excuse of losing your memory twice already?" A dismissive tone swept away any hope of the memory loss excuse working. "You should know that it won't work anymore." "Well, let's go to the training grounds." A pause, a sudden realization. Wait, training? Judging by the situation, this man was likely someone's master. The strongest martial artist on the continent, the Fist King Gerald from Portals. Former Fist King Gerald from Portals. A desperate plea escaped. "Hey, old man, please listen to me first." A hand reached out, offering something, the culmination of much conversation. It was time to begin the training. The moment hung, filled with a sense of the unreal, a feeling akin to stepping into the panels of a comic. Confusion swirled. What in the world was happening? The bewilderment was complete, a total loss of understanding. A sense of doom settled in. It felt like this was the end, the way everything would come crashing down. There was a noticeable shift in demeanor, a gentler air about him that hadn't been there before. Could the memory loss truly be responsible for such a change? Perhaps the harshness of the martial arts gym, unbreakable, had simply masked the softer side. The method was straightforward, even brutish, so a lapse in memory wouldn't hinder progress much. Some memories had already faded, but it wasn't a major concern. The path forward was clear, easily addressed. Everything would mend eventually, even the memories that had been lost. A desperate plea escaped, a cry for aid from a human who relied on the crutch of weapons, forever dependent on external strength to compensate for inherent weakness. It was absurd to lean on equipment, a form of escapism, a dishonest refusal to conquer personal frailties. A true warrior confronts weakness, honing it into strength. In 50 years, never had such a simplistic, ignorant approach been witnessed. Humans, like iron, grow stronger with each blow. Iron was brought up and a question arose. A chosen disciple was addressed with trust, the body held untold potential, capable of transforming into steel, a neon beacon of power. Not everyone could achieve strength through training alone. Just as only the finest iron could become steel, a certain quality was needed to fortify the body. They crossed paths, a meeting filled with contemplation about the ocean. It was as if the ocean was a metaphor for life itself, something that takes everything, yet doesn't fundamentally change. The idea of an ocean existing within felt absurd, a nonsensical concept that brought forth frustration. The conversation needed to stop. The training session ended, a signal to rest. Relief washed over as the realization of survival sunk in. Even after taking such a brutal hit, the body had endured. Gratitude was expressed for the resilience shown. A soft gasp escaped, eyes widening at the sight of herb flower petals. Could this be a healing potion? The sheer volume of the liquid needed to fill a bathtub was staggering. The opulence of a queen bathing in milk paled in comparison. It was a restorative medicine bath, a much-needed remedy to cool down after the intense training. The power and recovery potion allowed for rapid healing. The body was able to recover almost instantly, strengthening before injuries could even occur. It was a sound, effective training method. Having fought him before, the toughness of his body was known firsthand. This level of conditioning indicated years of dedication, a regimen started in youth. The realization washed over, it was time travel. Confusion arose. What happened to the original self from this time period? Was there a younger version out there? Could two identical souls possibly coexist within the same timeline? Two hypotheses formed. The first suggested that the future self was residing inside the other's body. The second hypothesis remained. The soul residing within young Leifenhart's body belonged to the first king. The studio lights seemed harsh, the equipment a jumbled mess. Each piece hummed with potential, a promise of creation, but all he felt was the heavy weight of expectation. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a mix of nerves and excitement that hung thick in the air. A gentle reminder to nourish oneself came with a promise of renewed strength. Every bite was a step towards recovery, a necessary ritual to fuel the body. Replenishing the body's depleted resources was essential, and once the meal was finished, the suggestion of a light jog hung in the air, a gentle prod towards further activity. Fatigue tugged at the edges of awareness. Perhaps a return to the usual routine was in order, a familiar comfort in the face of exhaustion. Frustration simmered. How much longer could this torturous training regimen continue? Before, obsession with a certain person had been the sole focus. Worry gnawed at the edges of certainty. What did the future hold? What if the current self were to encounter the past self from a previous life? Would the two souls merge? Each individual soul, after all, was bound by the unique laws of the world. Under unfortunate circumstances, a soul could even face annihilation. 10 years hence, the young Leifenhart would embark on a journey as a magician, consumed by the ancient tomes within Delphi's magic tower. There seemed little reason for any encounter. But what if that other person were to seize control of the body? In that case, a confrontation was certain. That person's strength was drawn from a body honed by the unbreakable training method. With a frail form such as this, there would be no chance. That training method wasn't something one could undertake alone, it demanded the guidance of a knowledgeable master. But perhaps with the other person's level of strength, a way could be found regardless. Escape from this prolonged hell was the immediate priority. Tonight was the night. An escape was imperative, no matter the cost. Where to, though? Freedom beckoned. The old man was a monster, lurking where he shouldn't be. His sudden appearance suggested he'd been waiting. He'd been so well behaved the past few months, it seemed the escape attempts were over. The master mused aloud, another escape? Is this the 9th attempt? But there was a feeling of disconnect, of not being the person he once knew. Repentant, he declared, "I am a magician." An eyebrow raised in response. So, that's the theme this time? Memories of past claims surfaced, tales of other worlds, of dragons and gods. What was the story before that one? Ah, yes, a reincarnated Purim master from the Huan dynasty in the Far East. Well, at least this story makes sense, came the sardonic reply. Looks like you're improving. The suggestion was to return inside and get some sleep. Frustration welled up. Even though tonight's attempt failed, tomorrow's escape was already being planned. All right, I'll admit it, prison was a failure, he thought, but don't think for a moment I'll remain here any longer. The master interrupted, I've already attempted all that when I was your age, my disciple. Understanding bloomed as he was told, I'd been through it all, just like you. However, if you persist and see it through to the end, you'll undoubtedly be rewarded. The man once known as the Demon King for his unwavering resolve began to consider giving up his efforts to escape. The training method of Jim Unbreakable had a 130-year history of expertise in handling disciples attempting to escape. It was, indeed, a remarkable training method, and there hadn't been a single disciple who hadn't attempted to flee. Even with luck on his side, if he managed to escape, the old man would pursue him to the ends of the earth. It seemed much more realistic to gain his recognition and depart with his approval. The thought of being treated with affection filled him with dread. 2 years passed. A voice boomed, Congrats, Atonement, my disciple. You finally awakened your aura. There was a swell of triumph as the aura awakened. To think, this had happened before even reaching 20 years of age. It was a feat that put one in the ranks of the renowned swordsman Cyrus, who only achieved it later in life. A bemused surprise was met with a calm explanation. It seemed only natural, given the rigorous training methods of Jim Unbreakable. The point was to train the body in tandem with a will to survive. That will would eventually become a life force, manifesting as an aura. Apparently, this was standard procedure here. Anticipation bloomed at the mention of learning skills, a normal manner of progression at last. Thoughts turned to the prospect of leaving soon, a hopeful question hanging in the air, quickly met with a reminder to keep the master's intentions in mind. A simple, yet challenging request was made, a freestyle duel. 3 years had elapsed, the passage of time marked by unrelenting training. South of the Basal Kingdom, the harsh terrain of the rapid mountain range offered little respite. Jagged peaks clawed at the sky, their rocky faces scarred by wind and weather, a testament to the unforgiving environment where one pushed their limits daily. Respite. Jagged peaks clawed at the sky, their rocky faces scarred by wind and weather, a testament to the unforgiving environment where one pushed their limits daily. The monstrous calamity horn loomed, a formidable challenge that tested the limits of one's power and skill. Its presence radiated danger, a tangible threat that demanded respect and unwavering focus. And skill. Its presence radiated danger, a tangible threat that demanded respect and unwavering focus. In a flash of blistering intensity, the sky roared as a powerful force launched forward, leaving trails of blazing light in its wake. The very air seemed electrified, crackling with energy as speed blurred the scene into whirls of motion. The world below shuddered, caught in the moment of immense impact, energy unfurling like the wings of a fiery storm. Frustration simmered beneath the surface. Level 3 felt like a cage, a limit that desperately needed to be broken. Just a little more effort, a final push, and the calamity horn would be surpassed. The technique focused energy from the entire body into a single, devastating point. It was called Calamity Horn, a name earned from the way pure energy coalesced into a tangible form. The immediate goal was reaching level 4. He gritted his teeth, pushing onward, knowing the maximum level for the Calamity Horn was far beyond. Calamity Horn reached its true potential at level 9. Legend told of a single blow, charged with 9 layers of energy, capable of vanquishing even a god. But among those he knew, level 7 was the highest anyone had achieved. Even Master Gerald had only reached level 8. Master would grant his blessing for departure once level 4 was reached. He'd probably enjoy a drink and return late. It had been quite some time since he last visited the place below. If this presented an opportunity to slip away, then perhaps he should consider ending training for the day. Delphi La Stern was the name to remember. The incantation formed on his lips, yearning for the power to unleash a void bullet that would strike down any enemy. Arrow bullet. The body strained under the effort, unable to fully contain the magic being channeled. He remembered the vast magical knowledge he'd acquired, gleaned from an artificial light. He wondered if, even with this new, less capable body, he could regain his prowess as a magician. Even with zero knowledge of magic or calculation. A strange sensation prickled at the back of his neck. This presence, it didn't feel human. It was an orc. The orc spoke, its voice rough and guttural. Human. You pretend you not see me, then I not kill you. The mountainous landscape stretched as far as the eye could see, an orc lurking in the distance. Considering its size, it looked about 3 or 4 years old. It seemed like a boy. Had he escaped from a coliseum or something? The young orc reiterated its simple demand. Human. You pretend you not see me, then I not kill you. The grammar was terrible on purpose. It seemed like he was trying to start a conversation, perhaps because the other hadn't shown any aggression. Just as one would expect from the noble race, not taking a life unnecessarily, even in this situation. Curiosity arose about the young orc's situation. How was it possible for a human to speak the language of grace? A blessed encounter had indeed occurred. Confirmation came that the orc was being pursued. A wish was expressed to offer aid. A question of trust hung in the air. Recognition was given for the ability to speak the words of grace, likening him to a brother. A sincere goodwill was felt, yet there was a warning: helping would also bring danger. An intelligent tone was noted, prompting the thought that the orc might come from a high bloodline. Reassurance was offered, the ability to help existed, if only belief could be placed in it. The promise of magical concealment was made. The revelation came that he was a mage. Gratitude mixed with a hint of surprise. It was wondered if it seemed strange for him to be a mage, given his appearance. The favor was accepted with thanks. It seemed like this was going to be a nuisance. The exasperation was clear, having to go through all this just to earn a few silver coins? An inquiry was made to a passerby, had an orc brat passed through this way? The offer was upped, a gold coin for information. Disbelief was shown, a gold coin? The intention was clear, listen to the information, then pretend the offer was never made. Skepticism was dismissed. There was no point in talking. The orc footprints were obvious. Orders were given to move out. The novice spells, of course, wouldn't erase footprints. This was home, and an intense protectiveness flared, a refusal to let anyone cross the threshold uninvited. A surge of disbelief, laced with anger, at the audacity of being stopped. A gruff voice dismissed the apparent threat as nothing more than a mountain timing whelp, though another voice, tinged with uncertainty, countered that there might be more to this encounter than met the eye. There were over 10 of them, and a tremor of fear ran through their ranks. One of them, trying to sound confident, told the kiddo to quit the nonsense and move. Despite the bravado, there was an undeniable acknowledgement of the physique before them, even if they dismissed the person as still just a kid. The master's words echoed, a fist was a weapon, capable of killing. The question hung in the air, what was the right course of action? The master's reply was to show mercy to those weaker. For one whose bare fist possessed such devastating power, wielding a weapon was an act of mercy. Reassurance was offered that death wouldn't be the outcome of a blow from this. The speaker described the unbreakable Yash martial school, a place dedicated to unarmed combat, though not entirely without weapon techniques. Someone, seizing a club, challenged, attempting to appear imposing and ready for a fight. Heavy, strained breaths filled the air, a sign of the effort being exerted. Panic seized them as they all rushed forward. It was pointed out that the staff arts, a weapon technique, were designed not for combat, but for remarkably beating disciples. A grudging respect was given, acknowledging that for mercenaries, their fighting style was specialized in evenly beating the body of the opponent. It was a pure offense, with no defensive techniques. A surge of disbelief as the speakers struggled to comprehend the situation. Even a sword was ineffective. How could this be a human body? It was admitted that it was their own body, but it felt like too much. The beauty of the staff art was its fatal finality. Someone groaned, attempting to reassure a worried mother that everything would be all right. Even if their joints shattered and bones were pulverized, they wouldn't die. The sound of pain echoed, as some declared their opponents would never truly perish. More cries for help rang out. Someone demanded their tormentor reveal their identity through pained breaths. The attacker scoffed at the request to state a name, noting the victim hadn't grasped the situation. All his friends were in a miserable state, so it seemed only fair he joined them. A desperate plea for mercy followed. The offer was refused with a wave of dismissal. A meek gratitude was whispered. The attacker lamented the end of the fun, a hint of disappointment coloring the moment. The thought of taking on a disciple and subsequently beating them up flickered through their mind. Unknowingly, they were becoming influenced by the values of Jim Unbreakable. A thankful exclamation punctuated the air. Someone considered the figure their savior, vowing never to forget this day and promising to repay the kindness shown. A question arose whether it was proper for a warrior to bow their head so readily. He had been saved and shown a new path forward. He declared the figure his mentor, promising to wield his sword for them if the time came. Among orcs, a mentor was equivalent to a life leader, someone deserving of the utmost respect. It was similar to a knight swearing fealty to their liege lord. A request was made for the savior's name. The response was hesitant, a simple affirmation. Leifenhart, came the declaration, followed by a full enunciation, Leifenhart walled in Terry's. The name etched itself into memory. A destination was requested, but the world stretched out, belonging to humankind. Where to even begin? What direction felt right? The world was so expansive. Surely there was a place to simply rest, even for a little while. Wandering seemed preferable to a life of servitude. Beyond the rapid mountain ranges, towards the southeast, lay a vast wilderness. About half a month's journey, the land of trials. It was rumored that orcs lived in hiding there, eking out an existence. The Blue Bear tribe called that place home. And so, with a farewell, the journey was set to begin. But a sudden thought struck, a question lingering, a name was needed. Cassio, came the reply, the speaker identified as the son of Crona, heir to the axe of Last. There was a quiet reaction. A stunned realization rippled through the air. The legendary orc warrior, one of the 4 heavenly kings, the words echoed in recollection. He had been a chieftain of the Blue Bear tribe, rising to become an orc great chieftain. It was perplexing that the young warrior would have met Cassio. Considering his nature, offering aid to an orc seemed entirely out of character. Fate had clearly intervened, tangling destinies in unforeseen ways. It was a most peculiar twist of fate. The implications swirled and grew into something profound. Most peculiar twist of fate. The implications swirled and grew into something profound. In the gathering, hushed whispers echoed as the group arrived, their forms stark against the dawn's light. A sudden, charged silence fell, a pause before the storm. The air was electric with anticipation, as if waiting for destiny to unfold. Emerging from the shadows, a fierce figure stood with an aura of unyielding strength. Beside him, his companion exuded a calm yet formidable presence, his eyes sharp and focused. Allies or adversaries, the balance hung precariously. In that fleeting moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, caught between silence and fierce proclamation. A heavy silence filled the air, charged with unspoken emotions. A deep breath was taken, preparing for whatever might come next. Resolve hardened within, ready to face the unknown future. There was a stirring inside, a need to step up and meet the challenges ahead. Hardened within, ready to face the unknown future. There was a stirring inside, a need to step up and meet the challenges ahead. A promise hung in the air, a bittersweet hope that paths would cross again someday, somewhere down the long and winding road of life. The words were heavy with affection, a bond of friendship and brotherhood forged in the fires of shared experience. The connection ran deep. An acknowledgement of lineage echoed, a title imbued with honor and the weight of generations past. A legacy of courage. In the vast expanse of digital realms, a shadowy curtain parts, unveiling a fiery emblem. It glows with the promise of battles untold, drawing readers into the swirling tempest of a legendary saga. Whispers of adventure dance across the void, beckoning the brave to embark on a journey through the pages of this epic tale. A world awaits, alive with tales of valor and the eternal clash of champions. Time marched relentlessly onward. Deep within the secluded, towering mountains, where the air was thin and the silence profound, another half-year slipped away, leaving its mark on the dedicated trainee following an unusual encounter. A surge of power emanated outward. An ancient technique was imparted, a legacy passed down. A sharp warning cut through the training session, cautioning against excessive force, a reminder to remain mindful of limitations. Energy swirled and coalesced, forming a protective barrier. A defensive technique was unleashed, ready to deflect any oncoming assault. The goop was remarkably effective. The spiral guard had reached its peak level. It felt like only yesterday there were arguments about being Leifenhart and not a drain. There was a presumption of drained essence. A past filled with relentless beatings had shaped the present. Why dwell on something 6 years gone? 10 years of rigorous training had passed under the master's guidance, resulting in substantial progress. Confusion arose about the current stature. A defensive response quickly followed, citing a height of over 190 centimeters. There was no room for such perceived inadequacy. A disciple of the unbreakable Jim should tower beyond 2 meters. Names and titles were invoked, adding weight to the expectation. The master inquired whether the breathing techniques had been followed diligently, and a memory surfaced. It was a vision of someone far taller, nearly 2.3 meters, that made him believe it was a problem with his body. He wondered if following the breathing techniques would cause his body to morph beyond recognition. A resigned acceptance settled in. Small size wouldn't matter, as long as durability was present. The final requisite was about to begin. Amidst the icy expanse, he stood firm, the air around him swirling with a fiery aura that danced defiance against the cold. His breath steady, muscles taut with focus, he faced the rising sun, its light reflecting fiercely in his determined gaze. His pupils, aglow with resolve, narrowed with a silent promise. Silence reigned, save for the crackling energy enveloping him, marking the beginning of a challenge where strength and spirit would collide. The scene was dominated by the imposing calamity horn, a stark reminder of the challenges ahead. It loomed large, promising trials that would push one to the very limits of endurance. The air crackled with anticipation, signaling the imminent commencement of a perilous journey. Would push one to the very limits of endurance. The air crackled with anticipation, signaling the imminent commencement of a perilous journey. In a world caught between silence and the crackling roar of unleashed power, a fierce warrior surged forward, arm ablaze with the force of 1,000 suns. With a single, determined strike, he cut through the air, igniting the very essence of his spirit. The atmosphere trembled, yielding to the uncontainable energy. As the light erupted around him, the world seemed to freeze, bearing witness to the warrior's defiant stand against impending darkness. A level 4 calamity was brewing, hanging heavy in the air like a storm about to break. The tension was palpable, a dark omen overshadowing everything. Storm about to break. The tension was palpable, a dark omen overshadowing everything. A wave of mirth washed over, the sound echoing with manic glee, revealing a twisted sense of satisfaction. There was a gloating sense of triumph, a cruel satisfaction in knowing that someone would finally be spared a brutal beating by the 50 families, all thanks to the level 4 calamity horn. A feeling of accomplishment settled in, the sense that a threshold had been crossed. It was time to venture into the wider world, prepared and ready after rigorous training. A blessing was given, a send-off imbued with a peculiar indifference. The disciple, Leifenhart, was urged to forge their own path, unbound by morality, free to embrace good or evil. The only expectation was to live authentically. Pride radiated from the speaker, a sense of fulfillment in witnessing the culmination of arduous training. It was the fruit of labor, a testament to the dedication of both student and master. The name Master Gerald lingered with respect. A memory surfaced from 60 years past. It was the wisdom imparted by the third First King Master on his last breath, a legacy distilled into 3 crucial tenets. The first principle allowed for the accumulation of wealth, but cautioned against theft, hinting at a moral compass, however skewed. The idea that being evil was permissible was addressed directly. It was asserted that even in embracing evil, there should be a certain finesse, a dignity to the approach. It was a strange belief to be sure, but one steeped in a particular kind of honor. The second point encouraged siding with the downtrodden, holding out the prospect of a life filled with praise and recognition. There was a crucial distinction often missed: those subjected to injustice weren't always the inherently weak. The world teemed with individuals even more vulnerable, so how should one discern the nuances of their frailty? This was the most vital point to understand. A solemn decree echoed, a sacred vow to uphold the legacy, the martial lineage of Jim Unbreakable must never be allowed to die. The elder urged to find a worthy disciple, someone to inherit the great teachings. Assurance was given, the words echoing with the weight of responsibility. Though difficult to find a child with potential, vigilance was key. Never relinquish such a prospect if one presented itself. A pouch was offered, containing coins for travel and clothing. 30 silver coins, a sum meant to aid the journey ahead. A hint of playful chiding surfaced, questioning the sum given considering wealth and status in the Basil Kingdom, and owning a grand mansion in the capital. It was then explained that it was half a commoner's wage for a year. Despite the cost of descending being a set amount, there was a small gift arranged in the settled mountains, along with a map marking its location. The suggestion was made to visit if the journey brought one nearby. A surge of emotion welled up, the realization that the moment had arrived. Could it be true? Freedom from this place was finally at hand. Arrived. Could it be true? Freedom from this place was finally at hand. An exclamation broke the silence, a strange mix of surprise and farewell. Consoling words followed, urging the disciple not to succumb to sadness at their parting. Exhortations of steadfastness rang out, encouraging a forward-focused path. It was a reminder that carrying the mantle of the world's greatest teaching made looking ahead essential. A fierce roar echoed, underscoring the sheer peril of the situation. Concern laced the chief's voice as he addressed the knights, reminding them that their targets were nobles. He was desperate to understand the source of the escalating tension. The village chief, emboldened by desperation, demanded the knights compensate them for the food they had consumed. He castigated the knights and offered a meager sum, hoping it would suffice. Disbelief and scorn dripped from the knight's tone. He sneered at the offering, implying that the peasants were too ignorant to know the value of gold. He scoffed at the payment, declaring it utterly insufficient. A villager, enraged, accused the knights of deceit, claiming they were trying to swindle the village, highlighting their audacity in trying to deceive them, as if they were ignorant of market prices. He spat out that they were no different than bandits, enumerating their abuses, seizing homes, devouring food, and then offering a paltry single gold coin as recompense. One knight questioned whether his colleague had considered the associated costs of labor and transport. Sir Edward waved away his concern, dismissing it as nothing of importance. A hushed observation was made, labeling young Master Stefan as truly wicked. A disdainful voice declared that extending kindness to the peasantry was a mistake. A sense of superiority dripped from the observation that the lower classes never understood their proper place. Unintelligible script filled the panel. The latest updates were available, promising a faster read for dedicated fans. The second volume explored ancient ruins. An insistent touch sparked immediate objection. The reason given was simply an inexplicable liking. But what could possibly be appealing about this thin, scrawny form? The appeal, it seemed, lay in a delicate sharpness, a resemblance to a finely crafted sword. That's how the body used to be. Now, the idea of being a sword was laughable, more like a final war machine, a stone golem. Now, the body was like a cave, hollow and vast. At least, there was a significant increase in height. Ceres would be 70 years old now, roughly 17 in physical maturity. This was the southern region of the Bali kingdom, specifically the city. If Ceres was to be sold next year, she would currently be held at the slave auction hall in the Chazan Principality. A dilemma arose: should the auction hall be raised to rescue Ceres? No, such a drastic action risked hindering the recovery of magical powers. Solving the problem with money seemed the most logical path, even though the price of a slave could exceed imagination, and he was currently penniless. However, with a formidable physique, heightened techniques, and memories of the future, it would all work out. He vaguely recalled a ruin along the road to the Chazan Principality. An inquiry was made, impatient: had the location of the ruin been pinpointed yet? The response was a request for a little more time. The speaker was a mage affiliated with the Magic Tower of Delphi, a ruin investigation specialist named Todd, aged 35. The ruin was indeed the correct location, the mage assured. It was here, the narrator revealed, that the great swordsman, Sir Claude Arist, was buried after a life of momentous action. 3 days had passed since leaving the city. Following the central road, the journey led upwards toward the ominous Satan Mountains and the kingdom of Basi. Acknowledging the physical demands of the trip, an observation was made about the incredible resilience of the body, almost impervious to the cold. It was noted that previous Fist Kings were known to remove their tops even in winter, though there were no current intentions to follow suit. The ultimate secret technique, artificial flashback, was employed in a desperate attempt to recover lost memories. Memories regarding the ruins within the Satan Mountains surfaced, predating the regression. The figure recalled a mage named Todd, encountered during studies at the Magic Tower of Delphi, who had urged an investigation of the ruins alongside the house of Marquis Arist. Before the regression, a visit to these ruins had indeed taken place. A relic underground, overlooked by Todd and his party, was discovered. The sale of these artifacts yielded over 2,000 gold coins, proving a worthwhile profit. The battle village stood just as remembered. A question arose about the next course of action. The perilous Valley of Death was mentioned, a place normally avoided. The demand for a guide was discussed, along with the grave consequences of refusing, a fate similar to that of the village chief. There was a resigned agreement to comply. A muttered expression of disgust targeted the nobility, a bitter resentment simmering beneath the surface. Worried questions were posed about potential repercussions if overhearing occurred. Reassurances were given about a willingness to go. A declaration of expertise in mountain climbing was made, claiming unrivaled skill within the village. It was acknowledged that no one else was truly suitable for the task. A reluctant plea was heard, a child's voice expressing a deep desire to avoid the journey. An expectation of success was voiced, accompanied by a reminder of the commitment made. A protest followed, a renewed expression of reluctance. A counteroffer was made, suggesting someone else could take their place if they were so unwilling. A startled sound broke the tension. An inquiry was made about the newcomer's identity. The response identified them as merely a traveler, passing by and overhearing the conversation. It was a strange coincidence, someone just happening to poke their head under another's roof. He inquired if the area was known. Despite a deep familiarity with the lands, the other was determined to venture into the Valley of Death. A chilling statement was made, they had been there before. The Valley of Death held a grim reputation, no one had ever returned alive. Despite the warning, the other remained steadfast. There was a sense of intervening with fate by preventing the other from certain death. The Valley of Death, in other words, a dungeon. It was a remnant of a forgotten, ancient Silver Age. 50 years prior, a knight named Claude, of the Marquis Action family, had risen to prominence. By the young age of 45, he'd awakened his aura, embarking on countless adventures, and his heroic deeds were renowned throughout the Basal Kingdom. However, excessive fame can corrupt even the noblest of hearts. Claude, accompanied by a single servant, ventured into the Valley of Death, where he met his end. The true problem lay in the magic sword, Action, which he had taken with him, and had never returned. This sword was a symbol of the Marquis Action family, passed down through generations. The quest to retrieve this treasured sword had persisted for 50 years. Stefan on Lepanto Action, a grandson of Claude, perhaps? The other possessed a gracefulness so overwhelming, even without being mounted on horseback. A replica of the knight among knights. The compliment seemed to lift the mood. Nearby, Slayer Elf frolicked in the daylight. A party member, Lillian, was a priest. There was a curiosity as to whether this young priest could wield proper divine magic. And the surprise of that face belonging to a man. There was a desire to speak with Todd, but the opportunity hadn't presented itself. The two had been engrossed in conversation the entire time. Todd acted similarly when speaking to a younger version of the other. There was something strange about the air around them. It was a revelation about the man. Disbelief washed over them. Todd, a good guy? It couldn't be. Then came a strange compliment, an assertion that a fine choice had been made, though the context remained unclear. The offer to guide the way was met with humble acceptance. It wasn't something impressive, just a necessity born of the village's cowardice. The villagers were tiptoeing around something, gripped by fear, a perspective that was understandable given the circumstances. But what was there to fear? The kingdom's brave knights were here, or so it should have felt. Disgust dripped from their words as they spoke of the knights, those blasted knights. They were all so high and mighty, puffed up by the chivalric code. It bred narcissists, apparently. The dust swirled around, a visual prelude to the chaos that was about to erupt. The air grew thick with anticipation, a moment hanging heavy before all hell broke loose. The air grew thick with anticipation, a moment hanging heavy before all hell broke loose. In the heart of chaos, an unstoppable force spirals violently, leaving a trail of sheer power. The air crackles with energy, a fierce entity commanding the eye with its blazing intensity. Its eyes burn with a captivating fury, as if daring anything to stand in its path. The world around it blurs, swallowed by the whirlwind it has summoned, a tempest of strength and defiance making the very ground tremble. Ambush! The warning cry sliced through the air, instantly followed by the order to form ranks. Panic threatened to set in, but discipline held, barely. A guttural roar echoed through the trees, something primal and terrifying. It spoke of savagery, of a hunger for violence that sent shivers down the spine. Rage boiled over. How dare this filthy creature target a human, one blessed by Gaia? The indignation was palpable, a righteous fury at the affront. The call to action rang out, Night of action, eliminate your enemies. A fiery chain erupted, a weapon unleashed with brutal efficiency, intended to obliterate the threat before them. Chain erupted, a weapon unleashed with brutal efficiency, intended to obliterate the threat before them. There was a surprising resilience within their ranks, a courage that seemed to swell within them. Especially that Stefan, the brat, as they called him. His swordsmanship held a spark, a flicker of potential that exceeded initial expectations. From a mage's vantage point, they were adequate, but through the eyes of a warrior, their movements were clumsy, unrefined. It was no wonder Master Gerald held such pride in his teachings, though that wasn't saying much. Clumsy, unrefined. It was no wonder Master Gerald held such pride in his teachings, though that wasn't saying much. In a blur of motion, the fierce warrior lunged forward, his hair a wild mane of power. A fiery determination ignited in his eyes, cutting through the chaos like a blade. His roar echoed around him, mixing with the rush of adrenaline, as he hurtled toward his adversaries. The very air seemed to tremble with his unyielding energy, as time slowed to capture the moment of intense confrontation. In the heart of the clash, raw tension crackled like thunder in the air. A fierce warrior, eyes burning with intensity, unleashed a powerful blow, the force of their determination channeled into their fist. The opponent's face twisted with surprise and pain, momentum carrying them backward as sound exploded around them. Time seemed to slow, heartbeats echoing with the impact, before gravity took command and pulled the adversary further into defeat's embrace. In this frozen moment, the battlefield held its breath, a dramatic pause in the symphony of combat. A deep concern arose, a worry that tugged at the edges of awareness. It seemed no one was truly watching over them, no one was ensuring their safety and well-being. A somber realization settled. Was truly watching over them, no one was ensuring their safety and well-being. A somber realization settled. The Trade City card depicted a landscape of varying terrains, the serene basin, the sturdy Frant Plateau squad, the open plains promising gains, the battle-worn village, and Baron Burkiff's imposing Riki. The era was shadowed by the low Marquis Alshan, the capital city a distant promise of safety. The names of places echoed in memory, Penny Cromgedy and Saliad, whispered like secrets of safety. The names of places echoed in memory, Penny Cromgedy and Saliad, whispered like secrets. The setting appeared to be Zach Lee's reduced studio, perhaps a place of innovative design or artistic creation. Numbers and codes intermingled with seemingly random words, hinting at complex projects and perhaps a touch of chaos. The atmosphere felt busy, humming with creative energy and the potential for something remarkable. An old guide, seemingly based on Todd's adventure journal, was nearing his unfortunate end amidst some sort of ancient relic. This moment felt significant and heavy with potential consequences. One could almost feel the weight of history and impending doom hanging in the air. felt significant and heavy with potential consequences. One could almost feel the weight of history and impending doom hanging in the air. Stefan of Alton led this particular expedition, his name carrying an air of authority and experience. His leadership seemed crucial to the group's success, and perhaps their very survival in the face of untold dangers. A desperate cry for help echoed out as someone, caught in a perilous situation, pleaded for assistance. Despite any perceived flaws, there was a sense of humanity about the person in trouble. He seemed lost in his own world, oblivious to the needs and feelings of those around him, a trait that caused some to question his character. The lack of consideration for others cast a shadow on his image. Urgency filled the air, prompting a swift reaction. There was a desperate scramble to find cover behind the nearest tree, showcasing a flicker of concern amidst the surrounding danger. Despite the intense situation, something seemed to be causing no harm, perhaps even appearing insignificant. It was an interesting observation considering the circumstances. A sharp, sudden pain flared. The sensation was intense and localized around the eye, causing a wince and a moment of vulnerability. After years of relentless training, there was a hollow ache, a question of whether there were even tears left to shed. A report came in, the magician and priestess were safe. Relief washed over, confirming both were unharmed. A playful voice broke through the tension, laced with a hint of wounded pride, wondering if their own safety mattered at all. Still, a resounding cheer went up, "Glory to the Knight of Alton." The air hung thick with the weight of victory, the unspoken understanding to rest and savor the moment hard won. A chorus of thankful shouts erupted, gratitude directed towards the magician, each voice echoing the sentiment of owing their safety to him. He brushed it off with a humble wave, "Don't mention it." The conversation shifted, a mention of the magician's origins in the magic tower of Delhi piquing curiosity. A question arose, a tentative inquiry about a friend residing there, a certain Leifenhart. Recognition sparked in the magician's eyes at the name Leifenhart. An amused tone colored the response, surprised that the boy had such a muscular friend. He was seen as kind. A beat of agreement followed, acknowledging Leifenhart's cuteness. The question came again, a probe disguised as casual concern, wondering about his well-being and any unusual happenings surrounding him. The magician affirmed that Leifenhart was doing well, immersed in his magical studies. A direct question followed, had anything strange been noticed about him in recent years? A pause, a thoughtful silence, then a hesitant, anything strange? I'm not sure. The description of Leifenhart was vivid, noting his sharp nose, jewel-like eyes, and smooth skin. A comparison was drawn to Gerald, both obsessed with the human body, but in different ways. Panic began to set in. A silent internal debate raged, contemplating violence, to strike down this person in righteous fury. The conversation was directed back to Leifenhart's actions, seeking confirmation of anything unusual. A dismissive wave of the hand, a lack of interest in the boy's behavior. A new question arose, concern etched on the face, inquiring if the other person was hurt. Dismissing concerns with a wave, the high priestess insisted on tending to the wounded orcs. The others, though battered, reassured her that they were all right, eager for her to focus on the more pressing threat. They weren't badly hurt, or so they claimed. Ignoring the protest, the priestess urged everyone to remain still. It was frustrating to see her expend her mana on those who would heal on their own. Why waste such precious energy? There was a strange mix of gratitude and resentment. While she was kind enough to heal injuries, the treatment felt less like care for fellow humans and more like tending to beloved pets. The chasm between humans and demi-humans loomed large. The guide was urged to pick up the pace and continue leading the way. The guide tersely directed the group, indicating a path straight ahead, followed by a left turn leading to Owl Creek 50. A warning laced with an odd tone suggested caution was needed. The guide bristled at the insinuation of having a problem, denying it immediately. After hours of weary travel, they faced the horrors of basilisks and dire wolves. The path forward was perilous and exhausting. Exasperation grew as they encountered yet another ogre, the dozenth one so far. Questions arose about why so many monsters were packed into such a small area. It was clear that straying from the safe path had been a grave error, leading them into this monster-infested hell. A thoughtful inquiry whether a pause for rest was required was also proposed. Frustration mounted with each step. Knights were seen as arrogant, priestesses as narrow-minded, and magicians as cunningly sly. Little did they know, the guide harbored a secret, a magician's heartbeat beneath the surface. Dismissing any hint of malicious intent, the guide internally fumed at being labeled an idiot. He only led them on the shortest route, as requested. It was not the intention to torment them. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was the place that led Sir Claude to his demise. The sheer number of monsters in this small mountain area was unexpected. Torment them. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was the place that led Sir Claude to his demise. The sheer number of monsters in this small mountain area was unexpected. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. There was no doubt in anyone's mind, this was it. It was the place they sought. Before them lay the ancient ruins of Walton, beckoning with promises of forgotten lore and untold dangers. The oppressive silence was broken only by the wind whistling through the crumbling stones, a stark reminder of the passage of time and the secrets buried within. With promises of forgotten lore and untold dangers. The oppressive silence was broken only by the wind whistling through the crumbling stones, a stark reminder of the passage of time and the secrets buried within. Whistling through the crumbling stones, a stark reminder of the passage of time and the secrets buried within. The entrance loomed ahead, a silent gateway into the unknown. A careful assessment suggested it was safe enough to proceed. Preparations were made, a silent call for everyone to brace themselves for what lay ahead. A solitary figure declared they would wait behind, their part completed. Dismissal was offered, yet a reluctance to return to the village alone lingered. A pointed observation was made about the excellent guidance provided, hinting at a deeper desire to remain with the group rather than face the journey back by themselves. A subtle accusation of abandonment hung in the air. Within the depths of the ruins, slumbered a being of immense power, its legacy intertwined with the very fabric of the place. A magical phrase, imbued with hope and courage, echoed in the air, "Good luck to you, brave knight of Alton." A sigh escaped, signaling a shift in focus toward personal objectives. It was time to attend to pressing matters. The ancient ruins of Walton stood as a testament to a forgotten era. Originally a logistical hub for the military, its technology, though ancient, surpassed modern understanding. Nostalgia crept in, a recollection of exploring these very corridors with Iris, a wistful memory of days gone by. A secret passageway was revealed through the whisper of a sylph, a sense of gratitude and admiration washing over the discoverer. "Well done, Iris, you're truly my goddess," was an internal thought. A wave of embarrassment washed over, yet there was a playful dare lingering. A promise hung in the air, a kiss as a reward for bravery. There was a mental review of actions within the danger zone, surprised by a previous boldness. Recalling the code, the balance of Aqua and Terra surfaced, like having the answers but not quite grasping how to use them. Frustration simmered at the lack of mana in this vessel, the limitations of the brain a constant annoyance. Suddenly, a surge of triumph, it worked. A protective instinct kicked in, the memory of spending 10 silver coins on the clothes making their safety paramount. A new goal emerged, testing the body's physical limits. In the dimly lit corridor, a figure with fiery hair stood resolute. Muscles tensed, he wrapped his arms tightly, preparing for the challenge ahead. Determination carved his brow, each breath steadying for the inevitable clash. Suddenly, an agonized cry pierced the air, echoing off cold, hard walls. But with teeth gritted, he embraced the pain, eyes fierce, ready to confront the storm awaiting him. Confusion sparked. An echo of screams pierced the air, the sounds emanating from within. Panic swelled among those who had ventured inside. What was happening? A sudden realization struck. This secret passageway, a back door leading to the basement's 3rd floor. Its opening signified an intrusion, a violation of something hidden. A sign of intrusion. Memory flooded back. This building, once a military facility, must possess a security system designed to deal with intruders. Previously, attention had been solely on Iris. But now, with the Alton group in the basement, a new threat arose. They had triggered a trap, been cast down into the lower levels. A sense of impending doom settled in. This was not good. Air currents rushed around Thomas, the wind itself seeming to whisper warnings of the dangers ahead. The anticipation hung heavy, a tangible weight pressing down. A sense of dread washed over, a chilling realization of the sheer impossibility of the situation. Disbelief warred with mounting terror as the eyes beheld something inexplicable, something that defied comprehension. A desperate question formed, barely audible, lost in the rising storm of fear. The eyes beheld something inexplicable, something that defied comprehension. A desperate question formed, barely audible, lost in the rising storm of fear. A wave of despair crashed against the group. The grim reality settled, heavy and suffocating. Victory was an unattainable dream. The odds were stacked impossibly high, and all hope seemed to dwindle with each passing moment, replaced by the chilling certainty of defeat. Survival felt impossible. Stacked impossibly high, and all hope seemed to dwindle with each passing moment, replaced by the chilling certainty of defeat. Survival felt impossible. In the dimly lit corridor, shadows clung to the ancient stone walls, whispering tales of battles long past. A lone warrior stood firm, heart pounding with a fierce resolve. Clad in armor, a cloak billowing behind, they faced a monstrous entity, its grotesque form looming ominously. The warrior tightened their grip on the blade, ready to strike. Tension crackled in the air as the creature's twisted form shifted, preparing to unleash its malevolent fury. This was a test of courage and skill, where the line between hero and prey blurred under the flickering torchlight. A deep-seated feeling of helplessness began to bubble. Was it even conceivable for mere mortals to confront such an overwhelmingly powerful demonic entity? The question lingered, laced with both fear and a desperate yearning for some glimmer of hope, some impossible path to victory. A call went out, a plea for divine intervention. The words were spoken with conviction, a desperate hope woven into each syllable, as a healing light was beckoned forth to mend the wounds and mend the spirits. Gratitude was expressed for the priestess's aid, but it was quickly brushed aside. The situation was too dire for pleasantries, survival depended on everyone pulling their weight. The shared goal of making it out alive was paramount, a silent understanding passing between them. Relief washed over the group as they recounted their narrow escape. The floor had given way beneath them, nearly plunging them into the abyss. Gratitude was directed toward the magician, whose timely protection had saved their lives. Although they were safe for now, a sense of unease lingered. Uncertainty clouded their path forward. What unknown perils awaited them beyond the collapsed floor? A stone archway loomed, promising either grand entrance or foreboding enclosure. The possibilities hung heavy in the air. Terror seized them. A monster. The realization crashed down, paralyzing some while others began to scream. Panic spurred desperate action, a frantic scramble for escape. But above the fear, a voice rose, invoking divine power, a plea for wrathful light to strike the creature. The world stilled, breath held. Another fervent prayer echoed, a desperate wish for burning courage to be bestowed upon the fleeing. Disgust laced the observation of the fallen knights. Knights, they scoffed, seeing only wasted potential and broken bodies. The prayer for divine aid was repeated with bitterness. The divine plea resonated again, the words a mirror of the earlier cry for courage. Wonder and resentment mixed, questioning the source of the soldiers' frenzied bravery. They were transformed, driven by an external force, acting with courage that seemed not their own. Where was true bravery when faced with a monster? External force, acting with courage that seemed not their own. Where was true bravery when faced with a monster? A new voice thundered, commanding repair, a call to the earth to reclaim what was rightfully hers, iron and steel. The ground seemed to vibrate with anticipation. What was rightfully hers, iron and steel? The ground seemed to vibrate with anticipation. In the fading light of the ruined city, a warrior surged through chaos, her blade gleaming like a fragment of the moon. The air crackled around her, charged with unyielding energy as she launched herself towards the monstrous serpent coiling amidst the shadows. Her eyes fixed with fierce determination, she cut through the air, leaving a trail of azure light. The beast writhed, shaking the ancient stones beneath them, but her resolve was unbreakable. It was a dance of fury and grace, a testament to defiance against the looming darkness. A dry, almost mocking sound echoed in the air, a sharp expulsion of breath that carried a weight of disbelief and perhaps a hint of dark amusement at the unfolding situation. Carried a weight of disbelief and perhaps a hint of dark amusement at the unfolding situation. A subordinate expressed concern, a posture of subservience as they inquired if they had been helpful to their master. There was a tone of genuine care, and a need to please their superior. The response was blunt, devoid of warmth. It was more an acknowledgement of existence than praise or thanks. It was a casual statement thrown to the wind. Existence than praise or thanks. It was a casual statement thrown to the wind. A gasp of surprise escaped. There was shock at the sight, and disbelief at the survival of someone thought long gone. Respectful surprise mingled with apprehension toward the vile beasts present. An attempt was made to rally the troops, urging everyone to regain their composure and focus. There was grim acknowledgement of the situation, referencing the fall of Claude Mathis, a tragedy that undoubtedly fueled resolve. The scene transitioned, hinting at a larger narrative beyond the immediate conflict. The underlying medium, the world of sequential art, hinted at endless possibilities. In the flickering darkness of a ruined battleground, a lone knight stood resolute, a stark silhouette against the inferno's roar. Looming before him was a formidable creature, birthed from flames and shadows, its eyes burning with a malevolent fire. The air itself seemed to quiver in fear as the heat rippled outwards, threatening to consume all in its path. Sparks danced around the knight, deflecting off his armor like raindrops, while he gripped his sword tighter. The moment hung in the balance. Courage clashed with an unyielding force of nature, as the knight prepared to face the fiery colossus. In the heat of battle, a fiery beast let out a terrifying roar, its gaping maw glowing with an infernal light, ready to unleash chaos. Sparks and flames danced around, casting shadows that flickered like ghosts. Amidst the chaos, a lone warrior in a flowing cloak steadied his stance, muscles tensed, weapon in hand. The ground trembled beneath him as he faced the fiery onslaught, preparing for the inevitable clash. A single breath separated him from the engulfing fury, yet his resolve was unwavering. In the heart of chaos, flames roared with a ferocious hunger, casting a flickering dance of light and shadow over the battlefield. Soldiers, eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination, surged forward against the dark behemoth towering over them. The air crackled with the sound of metal meeting monstrous hide, each clash reverberating like a thunderous drum. Amidst the fiery haze, courage and desperation intertwined, driving the warriors to face the fearsome creature that loomed with eyes burning like embers in the night. A tremor of fear ran through the assembled knights as a taunting question echoed. The implication was clear: they were expected to be ready. Doubt not at their resolve. How could they claim to be brave, the very knights of action, if they were unprepared for what lay ahead? Frustration mounted, a desperate mantra repeating in his mind. The stakes were impossibly high, defeat was not an option. The weight of responsibility pressed down, fueling a desperate need to prevail against the odds. Defiance flared, a refusal to surrender. They would meet their end with courage, fighting until their last breath. The sentiment spread through the ranks, steeling their determination in the face of overwhelming odds. A rallying cry pierced the air, a declaration made in the name of action itself. Valorin was more than just a place, it was a symbol, and he embodied its might. The words resonated, a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching darkness. The signal began, an ominous sign of what was to come. The air crackled with anticipation as the group prepared for the devastating blow. A powerful strike was imminent, promising destruction and chaos as it unleashed. Group prepared for the devastating blow. A powerful strike was imminent, promising destruction and chaos as it unleashed. Chaos erupted as the devastating blow landed. Dust and debris filled the air, obscuring everything in a thick haze. The impact reverberated through the ground, shaking the very foundations of their world and leaving destruction in its wake. The impact reverberated through the ground, shaking the very foundations of their world and leaving destruction in its wake. A wave of holy energy surged forth, a radiant beacon intended to obliterate the malevolent entities that dared to exist in its presence. It was a declaration, a divine decree delivered in a blinding flash, promising annihilation to those who reveled in darkness. The air crackled with anticipation, the very essence of good poised to eradicate evil. A gasp escaped, a soft expulsion of air that spoke volumes of the surprise or perhaps realization that had just dawned. The world seemed to pause, hanging in the balance as the implications of the moment settled into the forefront of awareness. It was a breath that marked a transition, a turning point where understanding bloomed from the soil of the unknown. The implications of the moment settled into the forefront of awareness. It was a breath that marked a transition, a turning point where understanding bloomed from the soil of the unknown. That marked a transition, a turning point where understanding bloomed from the soil of the unknown. In the heart of the swirling chaos, a powerful clash of wills unfolded. Flames roared with fierce intensity, painting the air with a molten glow. Dark silhouettes danced in the inferno's embrace, battling amidst a storm of shadows and fire. Above, a figure defied gravity, wielding an unseen force that crackled with raw energy. The very air vibrated with the force of the confrontation, as if reality itself held its breath, awaiting the outcome of this epic struggle. An awareness of the space between panels, between moments of the story, bloomed. There was a recognition of the art, of the hands that crafted this world, of the medium through which this narrative flowed. It was a pause to acknowledge the creators, the silent architects of this unfolding drama. This world, of the medium through which this narrative flowed. It was a pause to acknowledge the creators, the silent architects of this unfolding drama. A pause to acknowledge the creators, the silent architects of this unfolding drama. A low murmur rippled, laced with curiosity and perhaps a hint of amusement. It was a casual observation, a fleeting thought-given voice. The mind wandered, considering the implications of the presented information, the origins of the story, and the hands that carefully spun this web. The creature collapsed, defeated by a single, devastating strike. There was a sudden, unsettling ease to the victory. The force behind the blow was incredible. It was easy to understand how one could be pushed to the edge of oblivion by such raw power, feeling utterly helpless and fragile in its wake. To the edge of oblivion by such raw power, feeling utterly helpless and fragile in its wake. A sigh escaped, followed by a practical assessment of the situation. The bodies needed to be moved, transported to a secure location away from immediate danger and prying eyes, a sanctuary where they could rest undisturbed. A figure emerged from the shadows, and a wave of bewilderment and alarm washed over the group. Who was this mysterious stranger, and what were their intentions? The air crackled with unspoken tension and anticipation. Panic surged as the newcomer approached. A desperate cry went out, an instinctive warning to others: get out of the way. Flee. The urgency was palpable, driven by an overwhelming sense of threat. Get out of the way. Flee. The urgency was palpable, driven by an overwhelming sense of threat. In the heart of a storm, shadows twist and coil like specters summoned from the abyss. The air sizzles with an ominous energy, while molten eyes blaze with an unsettling fire. As fragments cascade around a grim visage, the atmosphere brims with a foreboding power, hinting at an ancient force awakening from its slumber, ready to unleash chaos upon the world. Dusty tomes lined the shelves, their spines adorned with faded gold lettering. Third volume, one proclaimed, its title promising knowledge and perhaps a touch of forgotten beauty. An ancient, weighty object sat beneath, its purpose unclear. Consciousness flickered back, bringing with it a wave of disorientation. Confusion clouded the mind as senses struggled to make sense of the surroundings. What had happened? Why was everything so hazy and unclear? The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. A sudden realization dawned: beneath the surface, a warrior spirit had always resided within him. Frustration simmered. How could such a question be avoided? A name was offered Lauren with a hopeful inquiry about Todd from the Magic Tower, seeking some form of validation or recognition. The name Lauren was met with unfamiliarity. A flicker of doubt arose. If truly powerful, shouldn't the name resonate? A probing question about clan affiliation followed, only to be met with a stark denial. The implication was clear: a commoner, devoid of lineage. Initial impressions shattered. The assumption of noble lineage, a child undergoing rigorous training, crumbled to reveal a feral existence, devoid of belonging. A sense of disdain arose. The work of defeating the adversaries was acknowledged, a subtle shift in demeanor. An acknowledgement of skill was offered, followed by an invitation for assistance. Curiosity piqued: how could the situation be recalled with such clarity? A swift dismissal followed, hinting at a lack of inherent skill. An order was barked, demanding respect be shown to the house. A sharp rebuke followed, questioning how someone without breeding could grasp etiquette. Agreement followed, reinforcing the notion that clanless individuals lacked proper upbringing. The question of mentorship arose, seeking the source of such skill. A dismissive reply: knowledge gleaned from simple, scattered experiences. A private thought surfaced: a new training method had been devised. Master Gerald's widespread fame was known. Revealing true deeds was not an option. A suggestion was made: with such apparent skill, tending to the injured would be a better use of time. A defensive shift, an informal protest questioning if the injured were a greater concern than the current task. Arrogance, unseen by its possessor, permeated the air. Such an attitude could only stem from someone accustomed to giving orders. It was easy to forget the man's age, unless he was simply ill-mannered. The thought occurred that he might be royalty from another country. The arrogance finally made sense: it was the tone an older person would use with someone younger. He was a strange man, indeed. There was a polite inquiry about Lauren's height, a curious question out of nowhere. The response came: about 192 centimeters. Next came a question about weight. It turned out that the man hadn't properly weighed himself before. The questions continued, this time about training. The answer was simple: he got hit a lot, ate a lot, and lifted a lot. The sudden friendliness was perplexing. Lillian's file was consulted. Maris was just as thought. It was said that a warrior never easily told one's method of training. After losing his parents at an early age, he was placed in an orphanage managed by his order. There, he was constantly teased by other children for being sickly and pretty. Because of that, Lillian began to yearn for things he didn't have: a healthy body, a haughty laugh, a deep voice. He once dreamed of becoming a monk, someone who proves their faith with their body. But reality was different compared to his expectations. His height stayed the same, puberty never came, and his hair grew at an alarming rate. He tried his best to train his muscles to fix his poor body, but the treatment for his muscle pains monstrously increased his divine force. And so, muscular people became an object of his envy. He was so big and beautiful. What was with that guy's face? Scouting the entrance was the plan. Someone wanted to be taken along. The worry was what would happen if someone got injured while they were gone. The solution was to go with him. A replica would assist others. While here, there was an agreement: yes, master. A question was posed regarding this decision. The reply was an indifferent allowance to do as one liked. Even if it might be a coincidence, the idea of accepting help from that wild man was unacceptable. He must be filled with pride, helping out a knight. This act of patrolling without knowing his place was proof he was making light of a knight. The silent promise was made to see how Lewis would act if a knight was involved. A demon's appearance was anticipated. It was the perfect chance to showcase honed skills. This would be a proper demonstration, a firm reminder of one's place. There was a hopeful expectation for a demon to emerge soon, befitting the expectations held for the young Master Stefan. Arrival at their destination signaled an opportunity for rest. The journey had been long, and weariness had begun to set in, making sleep seem like a welcome escape. In the heat of battle, a fierce roar erupted from a monstrous maw, reverberating through the air with a sense of impending doom. The warrior, determined and resilient, braced against the oncoming inferno. Anticipation electrified the atmosphere as fiery tendrils lashed out, their heat relentless and searing. Yet, the warrior stood unyielding, eyes set with unwavering resolve, ready to face the chaos with courage forged in the fires of countless battles. The immediate concern shifted to acquiring treasure. The book, once a source of irritation, was momentarily forgotten in the pursuit of riches. Perhaps it was time to finally get the reward that had been promised. A wave of satisfaction washed over. 50 gold coins from the age of silver were an incredible find, validating the search. There was a strong conviction that even more valuable items were nearby. Discovery. The Pouch of Infinity, a magical tool capable of holding items 10 times its volume while decreasing the weight to a tenth of the total. Next to it were a brazier of heavens, returning dagger, magic essence, and a sapphire. The pouch was overflowing with expensive items, causing surprise and disbelief. The previous events leading up to this moment remained a confused blur, prompting desperate recollection. What happened? Awakening came slowly. A voice broke through the fog of unconsciousness. You're finally up. It was pointed out that the items were responsible for the head injury that resulted in being knocked out instantly. Frustration simmered. There was an inability to understand why things weren't going according to plan. Gratitude was offered for the assistance. It was brushed aside casually. There was a grim, unspoken understanding that further, perhaps unwanted, intervention was still to come. Leifenhard busied himself with plundering the ruins. Meanwhile, Stefan required 3 more forceful awakenings. A fleeting worry crossed his mind. Hopefully, no vital areas were damaged. Even if something did go awry, Stefan's wealth would likely solve the problem. An unsettling feeling crept in. Despite maintaining constant vigilance, the surroundings felt strangely muted. A nagging thought suggested a possible illness, resolving to take medicine upon returning home. Space had run out. More looting would have to wait. For now, the path seemed clear enough to head back. The decision was made, and the return journey began, a silent confirmation acknowledging the intent. A curious question arose, laced with a hint of disbelief: were they secretly royalty? Dismissing the notion, he affirmed being just a commoner. The questioner found that surprising, questioning why it would be odd for a commoner to possess skill. The issue wasn't skill, but the condescending tone adopted in conversations. Confidence was expected of a warrior. The way Stefan was addressed was understandable, but using such informal language with Sir Edward, a man over 40, felt inappropriate. A realization dawned: being only 22, caution was necessary. Social graces needed improvement, a consequence of limited interactions with people. Etiquette was not exactly a strong suit. A consequence of limited interactions with people. Etiquette was not exactly a strong suit. A simple, sharp intake of breath. The creature stood before him, a hulking grellbeast, its presence radiating raw, untamed power. Its eyes burned with predatory intensity, reflecting the savage landscape that birthed it. Every muscle in its massive frame was coiled, ready to unleash a storm of destruction. The savage landscape that birthed it. Every muscle in its massive frame was coiled, ready to unleash a storm of destruction. Bewilderment washed over him. Why was it here? There was no memory of encountering such a monster during the initial exploration. Its presence defied expectations, raising uncomfortable questions about what had been overlooked. The realization dawned: that demon was the guardian of this ruin. All it wanted was to be exterminated, to fulfill its purpose. The air crackled with anticipation of a confrontation. A retreat was suggested, arguing it was too dangerous to face the demon with the present company. Attention was drawn to the sword the demon wielded. A thoughtful hum suggested a different course of action was brewing. A spark of an idea ignited. It was obvious to everyone, but the magnitude of the plan caused concern. Was he truly considering a fight against that demon? It was undeniably reckless, given the current situation. The argument for caution prevailed. Now that the demons' location was known, a strategic retreat to reorganize their forces seemed the wisest path. A fiery objection erupted. The idea of standing idly by while the great knight's sword was defiled was unbearable. No matter the cost, no matter the danger, retrieving that sword was paramount, even if it meant facing certain death. The resolve was absolute, unwavering. A call to arms reverberated through the ranks. Swords were raised high. Ominous battle preparation began. Amidst the swirling shadows of his mind, his eyes blazed with unyielding resolve. Tension clung to his furrowed brow, whispering tales of battles fought and sacrifices made. Yet, beneath the fierce determination, a solitary bead of sweat betrayed a moment of vulnerability, catching the light as if to remind him of the stakes. The weight of the world seemed to hang in the air, balancing between triumph and despair. The sheer foolishness of the plan was immediately apparent. This was madness. In the ruins of the Age of Silver, a time ravaged by dimensional rifts, a unique system existed. It served to replenish what was lost or lacking within the system itself. This was a place of restoration and echoes of a shattered past. The creatures found here, hailing from other worlds, were those absorbed by the defense system due to a malfunction. They were, in essence, the guardians of the dungeon, trapped and twisted by its broken mechanisms. These were people who had been living peaceful lives, only to be abducted and forced into servitude. The creatures, now melded with the ruined systems, had become formidable entities. Adding insult to injury, a demon capable of slaying Sir Claude, a renowned aura user, was now the dungeon's guardian. If a demon stronger than Gangrel guarded the dungeon, its power must be beyond comprehension. The monster, currently restrained by chains, seemed an impossible opponent. Was this truly a battle worth fighting? The hopelessness of the situation was palpable. Everyone would surely perish. While the assistance was appreciated, ultimately, this felt like a feral, dishonorable act. Some things in this world require risking one's own life. But it was emphasized that they were simply no match for that creature. The Knights of Action were urged to reconsider. Where did such courage come from? How could they possibly defeat something that even Gangrel could not? A cleric of Philonen cast a blessing of the goddess. An incantation was uttered, "Begone, foul demon." There was a sense of foreboding. It wouldn't work. With bitter irony, another one appeared. The Knights of Action were suffering a brutal defeat. Undeterred, someone urged them to maintain morale, proclaiming their bravery even frightened the demon. Stefan was the kind of person who would not heed any warnings. Edward, on the other hand, seemed more grounded. Perhaps he could be reasoned with. Stefan was somehow still on his feet, defying the monstrous Grellbeast. There was a backhanded attempt at a compliment, perhaps describing Stefan as graceful and dangerous, like a butterfly that could sting. But the truth was less flattering, more akin to a cowardly dance of avoidance. Anglia was present, ready to act. There was a desperate plea to strike the evil being with the sacred mace. It was a moment of dire need, relying on divine intervention. The sacred mace was identified as Philanen's. Philanen's was commanded to be brought down upon the creature. The urgency and desperation hung thick in the air as they hoped to land a crucial blow against a formidable foe. It was a plea to unleash the weapon's power, a last resort in the face of overwhelming odds as a group of people were relying on it. Formidable foe. It was a plea to unleash the weapon's power, a last resort in the face of overwhelming odds as a group of people were relying on it. In the face of overwhelming odds as a group of people were relying on it. A goopwork replica was deployed, its purpose yet to be revealed. The girl replica's skills were acknowledged as unexpectedly impressive. She was even considered better than Sir Edward, possibly the second strongest in the group. A realization dawned, perhaps underestimating these individuals had been a mistake. An ethereal, aquatic melody filled the air. Delicate bars of sound, cool as a glacial breeze, resonated, each note a chilling reminder of the northern lands. Atop a hand, a miniature blizzard swirled, a tempest contained, like the eye of a frozen storm. The scene focused on a sacred altar, a place of somber reflection and hidden power. Runes lined the ancient stone, a testament to forgotten rituals and the promise of transformative change as the next phase was on the horizon. A sense of urgency permeated the room. It became clear that the current defenses were woefully inadequate, unable to withstand the looming threat. A new, more robust system was essential, and the transition to Phase 2 was initiated without hesitation. The force of impact sent a shockwave through the surroundings. Debris scattered as a figure was hurled backward, the abrupt collision a testament to raw power and the undeniable consequences of a devastating blow. Dust and smoke obscured the aftermath, leaving the viewer in suspense. Testament to raw power and the undeniable consequences of a devastating blow. Dust and smoke obscured the aftermath, leaving the viewer in suspense. A single, almost forlorn letter hung in the air. The horrifying, unnamed beast lunged forward, its monstrous form a grotesque distortion of nature. Fear and primal instinct seized everyone nearby as the abomination threatened to devour all in its path, a terrifying spectacle of raw, untamed aggression. Everyone nearby as the abomination threatened to devour all in its path, a terrifying spectacle of raw, untamed aggression. The young master, Stefan, struggled, his body racked with pain. A low groan escaped his lips as he fought to regain consciousness, the name Edward a fleeting whisper on his breath, a plea for help in his moment of agony. A wave of relief washed over as the figure was discovered to be alive. The realization brought an immense sense of gratitude and reduced the overwhelming fear of the moment. Realization brought an immense sense of gratitude and reduced the overwhelming fear of the moment. In the heat of the fray, blurred lines of motion and shrill echoes of clashing steel filled the cool air. Amidst the chaos, a lone warrior emerged, framed by the soft glow of a setting sun. Shadows danced across her determined face as she wielded her sword with precision and purpose. Her armor, gleaming like molten gold, stood strong against the onslaught, capturing the light with an ethereal glow that mirrored the fire in her eyes. With a heart full of resolve, she prepared to strike, embodying the fierce spirit of battle. The enormity of what was unfolding settled in. A wave of disbelief washed over them, leaving a lingering sense of unease and uncertainty about what might happen next. Leaving a lingering sense of unease and uncertainty about what might happen next. In the heart of the chaos, the world seemed to unravel in a dance of flames. Fierce and unrelenting, fire surged from the ground, painting the air with its fiery wrath. Amidst the inferno, figures dodged and leapt, their movements a desperate ballet against the backdrop of destruction. Shadows flickered against the blaze, their forms barely discernible as they struggled to escape the consuming heat. Noise and light mingled in a symphony of chaos, leaving no room for fear, only the instinct to survive another heartbeat. Fiery chaos erupted around them, debris scattered through the air like embers in a tempest. Amidst the swirling inferno stood a figure, eyes glowing with an intense resolve that rivaled the flames. The ground trembled beneath their power, echoing the cacophony of destruction. Nearby, another watched with shock and awe. A flicker of fear mixed with determination gripped their expression. The air crackled with energy as their gaze locked onto the heart of the storm, ready to face whatever came next. In the midst of chaos, she stood frozen, eyes wide with the fiery dawn of realization as the world fractured around her. A thunderous boom split the silence, a cataclysmic force engulfing everything in its wake. The figure braced against the onslaught, muscles taut against the storm of light and sound, a defiant silhouette amidst the maelstrom. The air crackled with raw energy, and the world trembled as destiny collided with reality. The message appeared on the screen, a concise set of words that felt both official and impersonal. The sender was identified, all eco mics calm Mr. Lauren. A sheepish apology surfaced, an acknowledgement of delayed reaction due to overwhelming shock. The suddenness of the situation had clearly caught them off guard. The single, jarring word hung in the air, laced with an unspoken dread. Grellbeast. The name itself evoked images of something monstrous and unknown. There was a deep well of curiosity, a need to understand the full extent of newly acquired power. It was a pressing question: just how strong was this full potential, right now? A true test was needed. A nagging question arose: could the body's martial skill truly contend with the demon encountered during the time as a mage? Back then, risks without guaranteed victories were always avoided, but now the situation was different. Now, the path was that of a fighter. An unexpected thrill surged, born from the prospect of facing a powerful opponent. It was a sensation alien to a previous life, a clear sign of a transformation into a true warrior. A feeling that Master would appreciate, or perhaps, enjoy witnessing. Hesitation could be fatal. In uncertain situations, the initiative was paramount. Strike first, always. The fundamentals of Ki were remembered and now considered invaluable in the upcoming battle. The fundamentals of Ki were remembered and now considered invaluable in the upcoming battle. The body possessed incredible resilience, capable of deflecting steel. However, a magic sword was another matter entirely. Even with such defense, those enchanted blades could leave their mark, scratching the seemingly impenetrable surface. Entirely. Even with such defense, those enchanted blades could leave their mark, scratching the seemingly impenetrable surface. Amidst the swirling chaos of battle, an ominous figure soared through the air with fierce determination, cutting through beams of light. Below, a warrior, defiant and resolute, lay sprawled on the ground, having narrowly evaded the impending strike. The atmosphere crackled with energy as the confrontation reached a fever pitch, promising a climactic clash between forces of dark malevolence and resilient courage. A quick assurance was given to Mr. Lauren, a reassurance that everything was all right, despite the obvious strain. A silent gasp of amazement, a recognition of the raw power emanating from an aura user. Surviving that initial onslaught would have opened a window, a chance to counterattack and turn the tide. Having spent countless hours dodging relentless attacks during training with his master, a realization dawned. The opportunity to fine-tune skills in a controlled environment was invaluable, and a calm, focused approach was needed to make the most of it. Years of brutal training had instilled a deeply ingrained instinct for evasion. Confusion reigned, the words spoken seeming utterly incomprehensible. There was an overriding sense of dealing with matters far outside of personal control, and a desire for clarity in an unreadable situation. The weight of financial constraints and public demands grew. Personal control, and a desire for clarity in an unreadable situation. The weight of financial constraints and public demands grew. Disbelief and outrage clashed within. How could someone of such low standing, lacking both renown and noble lineage, possibly wield aura? It defied everything believed about talent and privilege, especially considering all the time training to awaken aura to no avail. The injustice of it burned. Everything believed about talent and privilege, especially considering all the time training to awaken aura to no avail. The injustice of it burned. The situation unfolded in utter bewilderment, and speechlessness was the only option. Possibilities swirled, hinting at something extraordinary. Bewilderment grew into an insistent curiosity. The figure's sudden appearance raised countless questions about identity and origin. The unknown was unsettling, and a desire to understand fueled the need for answers. A wave of shock washed over, eyes wide with disbelief at the grotesque sight before them. It was a creature of nightmare, an aberration that defied natural order. Fear mingled with morbid fascination, struggling to comprehend the monstrosity. Creature of nightmare, an aberration that defied natural order. Fear mingled with morbid fascination, struggling to comprehend the monstrosity. In a realm where shadows writhed under the fading light, the beast emerged, a colossal guardian of forgotten times. Its presence split the sky, a mouth yawning wide as if to swallow the sun itself. Crimson streaks etched battles in the heavens, clashing with the ancient power that surged from its core. The world held its breath, teetering between awe and terror, as the beast's gaze pierced through the fabric of reality, a harbinger of chaos and legend reborn. In the starkness of the blank expanse, a flicker of fiery essence struggled against the vast empty. A solitary line cut through the void, a metaphorical pathway leading who knows where. It was as if the world held its breath, a moment suspended on the edge of something unknown, waiting for whatever force might transform potential into reality. The ember, small yet defiant, hinted at a force waiting to emerge, promising that this silence was only the prelude to a greater unfolding. The hunger for recognition was palpable, a driving force that overshadowed everything else. An intense buildup of energy. The story continued, promising faster updates for those eager to follow the unfolding events. Chapter 3 unfolded, promising a story of considerable scale and beauty, designated as part 13 of an even larger tale. The expectation was set for something grand and visually striking, a chapter that would capture the imagination. Larger tale. The expectation was set for something grand and visually striking, a chapter that would capture the imagination. In the midst of the battle against the Grellbeast, a realization dawned: the rigorous training endured in the past had been invaluable. The monster's predictable attacks were easily deciphered, anticipated with an almost effortless understanding. It was as if the Grellbeast's every move was an obvious tell. Monster's predictable attacks were easily deciphered, anticipated with an almost effortless understanding. It was as if the Grellbeast's every move was an obvious tell. The ancient guardians of the ruins were resilient, possessing a fortitude that made them impervious to common wounds and minor injuries. Their strength was rooted in something far deeper. The ancient ruins pulsed with a faint, ethereal energy. Faint streams of mana flowed from the crumbling stones, wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. This power offered a small respite, enough to begin mending the injuries sustained in the fierce battle, a desperate hope amidst the devastation. Embrace. This power offered a small respite, enough to begin mending the injuries sustained in the fierce battle, a desperate hope amidst the devastation. Amidst the chaos, the warrior surged forward, fire trailing his fists like a comet streaking through the battlefield. His opponent barely had time to react as chunks of earth erupted beneath their feet, the raw energy of the clash casting shadows in the fiery glow. Momentum carried him onward, every step amplifying the power he unleashed, a force that seemed unstoppable, carving a path of relentless fury. In the midst of chaos, a fierce warrior faced the monstrous titan with unwavering resolve. The air crackled with energy as his muscles tensed, launching him forward with explosive force. Each heartbeat echoed louder than the thunder, eyes locked in determination. The creature's glowing eyes bore down upon him, but the warrior remained undaunted, swinging his mighty weapon with the weight of destiny. Dust swirled around their ferocious clash, a testament to the power and courage fueling this epic confrontation. The training regimen was intense, a relentless cycle of joint-lock practice and simulated aerial combat. Each drill pushed the body and mind to their limits, forging resilience and honing reflexes in preparation for the battles to come. Striking practice became a cathartic release, each blow carrying the weight of frustration and determination. The sandbag absorbed the relentless assault, proving to be an ideal target for channeling pent-up energy, a perfect outlet for honing devastating power. Relentless assault, proving to be an ideal target for channeling pent-up energy, a perfect outlet for honing devastating power. In the heart of the ancient stone hall, chaos erupted. A fearless warrior lunged forward, fists clenched, charged with an ethereal energy that crackled in the air. Ahead, a monstrous adversary loomed, its shadowy form twisting and contorting with power, eyes aglow with malice. Around them, soldiers watched, their armor gleaming dimly in the flickering light, a mix of awe and fear etched on their faces. The battleground trembled under the weight of impending doom and heroic defiance, as fate poised to tip the scales with a single, decisive clash. The temptation to end the fight swiftly grew stronger, a desire to cease the endless struggle. The Calamity Horn was a trump card, capable of obliterating the enemy in an instant. But lingering doubts held back the decisive move. The consequences of unleashing such power were dire, a devastating chain reaction threatening to bring everything crashing down. The very ground beneath their feet would crumble, burying everyone within the ruins. It was a frustrating predicament, to be burdened with such immense power, yet forced to consider the delicate balance of its use. Lauren was reminded of the sacred speck and how it could be used to defeat the monstrous word by changing the aura. But did he really think it was that simple, that he didn't already know this? Confusion clouded the features as he admitted not knowing how to perform the technique. He questioned the logic, unsure of where this conversation was heading. He could only channel aura into his body, not manipulate it in this abstract way. What sort of bizarre instruction was this? It sounded like something straight out of the Inker clan's teachings. Irritation flared as Lauren was interrupted, a curt question demanding to know what was wanted of him now. The inquiry was direct, focusing on his physical resilience, a check on whether his body was durable enough for what was coming. Acknowledging his sturdiness, a declaration followed, stating that a tan was about to be cast. A sense of foreboding filled the air. The purpose was unveiled, a request for the bleeding of Milanese, a strange phrase that hinted at a painful sacrifice. A plea was made, a solemn invocation to bestow bleeding upon the word, to fight in his name. A surge of pain erupted as the transfer began. To fight in his name. A surge of pain erupted as the transfer began. The air crackled with tension as the formidable beast loomed above, shadows swirling like storm clouds around its massive form. Chains clinked and rattled, a haunting melody of impending doom. Below, a determined figure stood, eyes blazing with resolve. The ground trembled with every massive movement overhead, wisps of energy wrapping around the lone warrior, marking the promise of an epic clash. In the midst of chaos, a towering figure erupts with raw power, muscles taut as electricity crackles visibly around him. Above, a beastly creature, wreathed in shadow and red light, is flung upwards. Chains strain and shatter, sending sparks dancing through the air. The fierce determination etched in the man's face mirrors the explosive force unleashed, as if the very world spirals around his defiant roar. A surge of protective energy washed over him as a powerful, sacred art spell, typically reserved for steel, was inexplicably cast upon his very being. The unexpected magic tingled against his skin, a strange and unfamiliar sensation. The transformation was complete. Norbert, a name whispered with disdain, surfaced in thought as a contrast to the person's alluring appearance. An inner voice couldn't help but acknowledge that beneath the surface beauty lay a formidable and potentially volatile personality. A wave of impatience crashed. There was a need to bring the conflict to a swift conclusion, to decisively end the struggle that had stretched on for too long. The air crackled with anticipation of a final, decisive move, a resolution to the current struggle that had stretched on for too long. The air crackled with anticipation of a final, decisive move, a resolution to the current struggle. A surge of power channeled into the leg, culminating in a devastating sacred kick aimed with precision. The momentum built with each movement, leading to a swift and brutal knee strike. The force behind the sacked knee kick threatened to incapacitate the opponent, leaving them vulnerable and reeling from the impact. It was a brutal and effective maneuver. Kick threatened to incapacitate the opponent, leaving them vulnerable and reeling from the impact. It was a brutal and effective maneuver. All the energy was focused into a fist, ready to deliver a devastating sacred punch. The blow promised to be the culmination of skill and power. Sacred punch. The blow promised to be the culmination of skill and power. In the heart of a storm of magic and chaos, a fierce creature writhed against its chains, the air crackling with raw power. Glowing symbols encircled the beast, while tendrils of energy lashed out in defiance. Pieces of stone floated around, caught in the swirling vortex, as the creature roared, challenging the binds that held it. The scene was alive, vibrating with an unrestrained fury that threatened to break free, painting the shadows with vibrant hues of otherworldly force. Darkness pressed in, a suffocating blanket woven from fear and uncertainty. The air hung heavy, thick with unspoken anxieties as unseen forces seemed to coil and tighten around them.
A palpable sense of dread permeated everything. Anxieties as unseen forces seemed to coil and tighten around them. A palpable sense of dread permeated everything.
In the shattered remnants of a once proud battlefield, the air buzzed with an electrifying tension. The ground trembled as an enigmatic figure stood defiantly, bathed in a mesmerizing, ethereal glow that danced and swirled like living flames. Unwavering and resolute, eyes locked forward, a lone warrior prepared to face the storm. Nearby, a woman with crimson hair looked on, her heart pounding in time with the shimmering pulses that lit the sky. The world held its breath, caught in the thrall of impending destiny. In the midst of a golden haze, a warrior stood tall, commanding the attention of those who dared to witness his might. His arm, a pillar of strength, pierced the sky, shattering the chains of darkness that once held him. Sparks of defiance danced around him as he claimed his freedom, radiating an aura of invincibility. Below, a girl watched in awe, her eyes wide with admiration, surrounded by blossoms that mirrored the youthful flush on her cheeks. Her world, painted in soft hues of wonder, revolved around the hero in a daze of enchantment. In a realm where elegance and power intertwined, she stood with an aura of blossoms swirling around her, each petal a testament to her grace. The air shimmered with anticipation, as if the universe itself held its breath. Beneath the surface, ancient symbols began to glow, lines of light converging toward a center that pulsated with energy. The time of awakening was near, and the earth whispered secrets of destiny in the silent glow of the crimson circuitry. A desperate plea cut through the tense silence, a fragile question hanging in the air. Had the ordeal finally reached its end? Was there a glimmer of hope on the horizon? Urgency laced every word, a frantic urging to break free from the magical constraints that bound them. There was a desperate need to undo the enchantment, to unravel the threads of the spell. Attention shifted abruptly, curiosity sparking amidst the lingering tension. There was a hesitant inquiry, a tentative attempt to connect with a stranger. Confirmation of a name, Lauren, was sought, a simple question hinting at a deeper interest. Accusations flew, laced with hurt and betrayal. The core of the grievance was deception, a hidden identity used to fool them all. The speaker was pressed to admit to looking down on those they deceived. The admission came, heavy with the weight of the accusation. The acknowledgement of strength didn't soften the blow. Trampling on their knightly honor was an unforgivable offense. A demand was made to know if the other had enjoyed watching their struggles, turning the knife with cruel mockery. But the accused denied ever mocking them. Mockery required attention, a focus that was never given. There was no interest, no consideration, not even enough to warrant a sneer. Why waste the effort on something so insignificant? The air crackled with fury, the insult landing like a physical blow. A surge of rage erupted. How dare they be so dismissive, turning their back as if the other were nothing? Humiliation burned. Amidst the chaos of a crumbling battleground, a powerful warrior grasped his weapon with unwavering resolve, its fiery embellishments glowing like molten metal. Above, the sky churned with dark clouds, foreshadowing an impending clash. Two comrades, their cloaks fluttering behind them, moved with urgency across the fractured terrain. Determination etched on their faces, they sprinted towards destiny, the echoes of their footfalls swallowed by the growing roar of conflict. A confused sound escaped, a reaction to the sudden shift in the confrontation. The epithet was spat out again, fueled by the audacity of dodging the attack. It was declared, with sharp intent, that mockery had never been part of their intention before delivering a powerful blow. The realization dawned, all this conflict, all this struggle, for this one prize. Despite the treasure's allure, greed wasn't revealed in their expression. Such composure spoke volumes about their strength. Frustration bubbled over. The concept of greed was denied with an edge of desperation. What greed? The craftsman dismissed the present creation with a wave, finding it laughable. Compared to the masterworks of the past, those weapons forged in the depths of skill and experience, this barely qualified as a second-grade trinket. The immediate task was clear: to leave. The present arrangement offered nothing further, no lingering purpose to be served. Best to depart this place, with its hollow dealings, and return to whatever awaited.
Let's do that, Honcho.
News of the cattle village stirred a reaction, but the precise nature of it remained ambiguous. It was more than a mere location, it was a puzzle. It was a key to unlock. It felt like somewhere significant, holding secrets ready to unfold. It was somewhere he knew he needed to be, but didn't know why. Was a key to unlock. It felt like somewhere significant, holding secrets ready to unfold. It was somewhere he knew he needed to be, but didn't know why. Her actions spoke volumes. First, she mended the afflicted, then distributed golden coins among the townsfolk. She understood the art of self-promotion, painting herself in a brilliant light. Yet, it sparked an intense envy. The amount she distributed was meaningless compared to the good press the Milanese Holy Church would gain.
A brilliant light. Yet, it sparked an intense envy.
The amount she distributed was meaningless compared to the good press the Milanese Holy Church would gain.
An earnest suggestion arose, a deeper investigation into the young man named Lauren.
It was a shrewd observation that his remarkable skills would pique curiosity, that there would be interest in someone with that level of proficiency.
A surge of defiance flared. The mere thought of lagging behind in strength was unacceptable.
Pride bristled at the idea of anyone surpassing prowess, igniting a burning desire to prove superiority and close the gap. At the idea of anyone surpassing prowess, igniting a burning desire to prove superiority and close the gap. The journey to meet Ceres had begun. As they walked, a question arose from a place of genuine curiosity and just a hint of annoyance. There was a growing frustration with the constant presence and the unexplained devotion. There were priestesses who dedicated their lives to wandering, bringing the goddess's blessings to believers across the lands. Everyone knew them as pilgrims, but their journeys often ended in tragedy. Initially, the intention had been to return to the safety of the Holy Church.
But a different path was now unfolding, a chance to embrace the life of a pilgrim.
The thought of traveling with someone so strong was appealing, yet there was something unsettling in their gaze, a familiar creepiness that stirred unease.
Was this another person only interested in the physical form?
A sense of being cursed washed over, a recurring pattern of attracting unwanted attention. Still, there was a glimmer of hope, a sense that this priestess might be different, genuinely good.
A polite refusal hovered on the tongue, but then practicality intervened.
A priestess, a healer, could be invaluable. Ceres could be hurt during their travels, and having someone skilled in first aid seemed wise. It wouldn't hurt to bring someone along who could attend to her. Indifference masked the true feelings. The choice was theirs, and the consequences, too.
Ceres was the goal.
The pressing matter was abdominal training.
What were the effective methods for sculpting the upper, middle, and lower abs?
Familiarity lay only in brutal beatings and the strain of lifting massive stones. Then, a memory surfaced, an alchemist rumored to have created an intriguing medicine.
Protein enhancement, it was called.
The very idea was unappealing.
So, no.
A frustrated yell echoed, directed at Howard.
Did he even train his muscles?
A heartfelt apology escaped, tinged with the weight of failed effort. Despite giving it everything, the outcome fell short of expectations.
Expectations loomed large, questioning the elf's willingness to surrender herself completely. Shouldn't loyalty and devotion come naturally to a slave before the heir of the canon trade union?
Suspicion arose when the price seemed suspiciously low, even for a sayer Howard.
How could she, a mere elf, display such arrogance?
Such defiance was innate, woven into the very fabric of her being.
The words stammered, pointing to the arrogant gaze.
The eyes, a striking feature, were not a choice but an inherent part of her. Frustration simmered, directed at the butler. Future purchases would be made at full price, regardless of the expense. A stingy attempt to save money had backfired, resulting in a complete defect.
What a mistake it was!
The command was curt and absolute: dispose of the defective slave without delay. Within Blenheim, the deeply entrenched elf slave market of the Chuzan Principality, the girl known as number 148 had been returned for a third time.
The rows of caged elves echoed with the despair of repeated rejection.
Her fate hung precariously in the balance, each return chipping away at her already fragile spirit.
What would become of her now?
Elves echoed with the despair of repeated rejection. Her fate hung precariously in the balance, each return chipping away at her already fragile spirit.
What would become of her now? Fame, I come. The shout rang with confidence and bravado, anticipating glory on the horizon.
The sound was cut short, leaving only a truncated come hanging in the air. In the bustling city of imagination, a beacon calls the curious to venture deeper. Whispered promises float through the air, urging seekers of tales to step briskly along a path lit by anticipation. Each step quickens the heart, where stories twist and turn with newfound vigor, awaiting discovery at every corner. The gateway to these adventures lies just ahead, where the promise of swifter journeys tempts the eager spirit onward. In the realm of Elvenheim, where tales of magic and mystery intertwine, the whispers tell of a land cloaked in ancient secrets, the Chotan Principate. Here, amidst rugged mountains and shadowed valleys, the winds carry the echoes of forgotten battles and the promise of untold adventures. It is a world waiting to be unsealed, a new chapter ready to unfold in the grand saga of time. Charade Principal Romans sought out the principal, eager to discuss the commercial country nestled in the continent's uppermost reaches. Bordering many nations, Zeppelin, the capital of Chazan Principal, flourished thanks to the Wan River, a vital artery for trade. The journey led through Trade City Card, the Merely Basin, and the expansive Frant Plateau Squad Plains, eventually reaching the shadow of the Satan Mountains and the Quinkady village. Finally, they arrived at Zeppelin, the heart of all commerce and the bustling capital of this prosperous country, a fortified city promising both opportunity and challenge. KD Village. Finally, they arrived at Zeppelin, the heart of all commerce and the bustling capital of this prosperous country, a fortified city promising both opportunity and challenge. The city lived up to its reputation as the continent's premier commercial hub, a vibrant, energetic space teeming with people and goods. It was said that its origins traced back to a wealthy merchant who had acquired the land from the Grime Kingdom, which explained the city's merchant-friendly policies and its reputation for being exceptionally mercenary. Ceres, it seemed, was drawing unwanted attention. A sharp instruction came to lower herself, questioning if she was deliberately flaunting her legs.
There was an undercurrent of jealousy and perhaps a little concern for her safety. A tense warning came, followed by a desperate plea for mercy. The situation appeared dangerous, hinting at a power imbalance and the potential for violence. An angry outburst followed, laced with disdain and contempt.
The speaker hurled insults, branding the target a filthy beggar and leader of the Dolphin Assembly, trying to diminish them.
A final, scathing command demanded subservience, reinforcing the power dynamic.
The speaker seemed determined to remind the other of their place in the hierarchy.
30 gold coins seemed a fair price for 30 strikes. But then, confusion. Something was definitely amiss, an unexpected turn of events unfolding right before them.
Concern washed over, a hand extended in offer of help.
Gratitude was the reply. The scene sparked outrage.
Demands to find the city guards rang out, fueled by a sense of injustice. But the moment was diffused with a soft assurance that everything was fine, accompanied by the offer of payment to settle things.
Disbelief flared, a sharp accusation cutting through the air. Just letting it go because of money?
This place, it was said, was as greedy as it gets. The world traveler reeled, their understanding of the world shaken. Despite all their journeys, this place was unprecedented.
Fines instead of jail time? Justice reduced to a simple transaction?
A question hung in the air, wondering what purpose could possibly draw anyone to such a town.
The hesitant response, a quiet confession, revealed the grim purpose, to buy an elf.
The name Lulu was murmured softly.
50 was the number given.
And then came the damning judgment, the reduction to that kind of person. A denial was issued, protesting the quick assumption, but the suspicion lingered.
So, if not that, then what? 16. It?
An internal struggle raged.
The past couldn't be explained, not now. Fine, let the other think the worst. A weary resignation, a quiet curse against all men.
There was palpable disbelief and disgust in the air. The sentiment was dripping with scorn, rejecting the notion of being perceived as anything less than a man. The listener was clearly offended.
It was almost unbearable to hear. Being perceived as anything less than a man.
The listener was clearly offended.
It was almost unbearable to hear.
Whispers painted a picture of the Dolphin Assembly, a group using its affluence to exploit traveling merchants.
A simmering resentment filled the air. Instead of wallowing in discontent, the merchants should work for their earnings.
Yet, the merchants were stuck, spewing curses onto the very streets they relied on. Agreement hung heavy, acknowledging the wisdom in the statement.
Merchants should work for their earnings.
Yet, the merchants were stuck, spewing curses onto the very streets they relied on. Agreement hung heavy, acknowledging the wisdom in the statement. Recognition sparked, a name spoken after a stretch of time. Beret, the voice echoed, laced with a familiarity tinged with something more.
It's been a while, Terry.
The query was sharp, demanding.
Where's the slayer you recently acquired? Irritation flared, encountering him here, of all places, was frustrating. A terse explanation followed, he was returned.
A rambling explanation suggested defiance as the core issue, she simply wouldn't listen.
Derision dripped from the words, one couldn't tame a worthless slave, which explained the organization's shortcomings.
It was clear they wouldn't excel. Scorn painted the air as miserable, raising doubts about his competence. She had been returned as defective more than once. That explained why she was so cheap. A wicked idea began to form: taming the defective slayer would bring immense satisfaction. The thought of the expression on a particular face fueled a decision.
A visit to Blenheim was now necessary, a place untouched for far too long.
A simple sound escaped, carrying a multitude of unspoken thoughts and intentions. There was clear bewilderment at the unexpected scene.
He was determinedly exercising. A silent observation noted his scrawny frame. He appeared to be working out far more than anyone realized. A thought lingered, why wasn't he bulking up?
Concern was voiced, cautioning against overexertion and potential immobility from muscle pain.
Reassurance was offered, promising no delay to travel plans. A suspicion arose, a sudden realization hanging in the air.
A display of quick problem-solving skills followed, with immediate success.
Understanding dawned as to why he wasn't gaining muscle mass. The explanation lay in the principles of healing arts, likened to reversing time.
Muscles grew through regeneration after being broken down, but his use of divine force interfered. The consequence of this was a constant reversion to his pre-exercise state. Frustration mounted at this realization. He was essentially undoing all his hard work.
The implication was staggering, 5 years of wasted effort.
Confusion clouded his features as he wondered what was wrong, if he had done something amiss. Dismissing the question, an offer was made to teach an effective training method later.
A practical observation surfaced: long hair seemed annoying for exercise.
An explanation was given about his hair, which grows back quickly. He mentioned a Korean saying about hair growing fast due to lewd thoughts, and a playful question about what kind of thoughts he usually had.
He then announced an upcoming trip to a slave auction, funded by the sale of relics.
A silent plea hung in the air, a desperate wish to escape the present reality and follow an unknown path. The slave market sprawled before them, a collection of various races, each bearing the weight of their captivity. Elves were the most sought after, their features aligning with human ideals of beauty. Their value soared far beyond that of orcs or other races, driven by superficial desires. The price tag spoke volumes about the value placed on life. Elfmen commanded 500 gold coins, women 400, and even young girls fetched a staggering 100 gold coins. Even young boys were priced at 30 gold coins, while orc gladiators stood at a mere 10.
Common orc slaves could be bought for 5, baby orcs a paltry 4 or 5. Elf men were undesirable, their high suicide rates making them a liability.
The longevity of elves, living 4 times as long as humans, fueled their popularity, though their extended childhoods were a known risk for foolish owners. It was said that Blenheim, an auction hall steeped in 3 centuries of tradition, specialized in these slaves.
Blenheim, named after the elven paradise, seemed a cruel mockery.
A sense of disgust washed over them, a visceral reaction to this place.
It was the first time visiting an elven auction house.
The establishment seemed to treat its merchandise better than the orc auction halls, but that was a low bar. No matter the superficial care, they were still slaves, and genuine happiness was impossible within those gilded cages. A counterpoint was offered: these beings were wild creatures of the forest.
Wouldn't they be happier with guaranteed food and safety in human hands? That was the conventional human perspective.
There was a deep conviction that forcing change through power was futile.
It would only breed fear, not genuine transformation.
A different kind of empire was needed, one built on principles starkly contrasting the dark reign of the Demon King from a past life. The goal was a nation embracing diverse races, standing in stark contrast to the previous reign. A voice then cut through the air, a formal announcement that the wait was over and the eagerly anticipated slayers were about to be presented. A sense of pride permeated the Blenheim auction hall as the slayers were introduced, deemed worthy of the esteemed establishment's reputation. A flicker of concern arose.
Had the display been too intense for a young lady?
An apology was offered.
Curiosity bubbled, questioning why anyone would bring a girl to such a place.
A melancholic thought arose upon seeing the forest fairies, descendants of great spirits, reduced to such a state. Then came an inquiry, a specific request for slayers with darker skin tones.
Amusement tinged with curiosity filled the air, as the request was deemed peculiar. A defense was mounted, clarifying that pale skin wasn't the issue.
The hypocrisy was then pointed out: a strong stance against elven slavery, yet the selection process seemed based solely on appearance. Assurance was given that a slayer matching the specific criteria existed. An invitation was extended to follow, leading the way to the desired individual. The scene cuts away, leaving only a simple arrangement of letters, CA.
Inside the Blenheim, a point of pride was the provision of adequate exercise for the elves.
Unique training methods were employed, leading to the development of specialized products. The elves were always nourished with fresh fruits and nuts, a diet believed to enhance their delicate sense. While elves were known for their slow growth, the specimens within the Blenheim were visibly thriving. The introduction to the auction hall seemed sufficient, and a desire to progress forward washed over the present company. The air crackled with anticipation, hinting at the spectacle yet to unfold.
An echoing silence filled the air.
A certain eagerness hung in the air, underscored by the desire to see number 148. An agenda was in motion, a purpose defined and now pursued with focused intent. The facility buzzed with activity centered on nurturing the next generation of combatants. These youths, not yet fully matured, were undergoing rigorous training, honing their skills for a future yet unknown.
The atmosphere was thick with discipline, a testament to the dedication poured into shaping these slayer candidates.
Attention shifted towards a specific figure, a female standing apart from the others. A sense of pride infused the air as focus was directed toward her. She was introduced as the featured item, the subject of keen interest and the centerpiece of the present transaction, possessing the potential to yield high value. She was introduced as the featured item, the subject of keen interest and the centerpiece of the present transaction, possessing the potential to yield high value. The centerpiece of the present transaction, possessing the potential to yield high value. The spotlight fell upon her, illuminating a delicate face, a name whispered like a secret, Ceres. A label, an identity, yet behind it all lay the enigma of her past and the mystery of her future.
What trials had she faced, and what destiny awaited her?
All lay the enigma of her past and the mystery of her future.
What trials had she faced, and what destiny awaited her? A distorted phrase lingered, perhaps a name or a title, else like two.
The significance remained unclear, shrouded in mystery, but it resonated with a faint echo of power and importance. A profound sense of anticipation hung in the air, a moment stretched thin with unspoken expectation. This seems to be an advertisement or a note about where to read further content. I will skip this, This seems to be a chapter/volume marker. I will skip this, An exclamation, a sudden realization hitting like a physical blow, as attention snapped towards newly combined elements. There was a warning, a desperate cry against impending disaster, quickly followed by the inevitable explosion. Confusion reigned as the cause was sought, the ill-advised combination of flame herb extract and cedars. Guilt and shame surfaced in a stammered apology, the weight of repeated failure heavy in the admission. Yesterday's experiment had ended the same way, with a destructive blast. A conflicted internal struggle played out. Despite the obvious signs of age, an undeniable charm persisted, creating a confusing mix of emotions. An invitation extended, a gentle urging to come closer, followed by the soft request to abandon formalities. The constant address of Lord Leifenhart felt unnecessarily distant, a longing for a more intimate form of address evident. The soot-covered face was an additional reason to approach. A simple question was posed, its intent not entirely clear. The query hung in the air, awaiting a response, its meaning veiled. This seems to be a signature or some sort of advertisement. I will skip this, Amidst the twilight hour, an enigmatic figure emerged onto the grand balcony. The air danced with glowing embers, casting a soft golden glow upon the ancient archway framing her silhouette. Draped in regal attire, her presence commanded the world below, where stone sentinels stood guard, their fierce visages softened by the warm light. Every tendril of her dark hair seemed to whisper secrets to the night, as if the very stars had come alive to lend her their glow, anchoring her amidst the ethereal tapestry of dusk and dreams. The scene was set. A final farewell was offered to the majestic ruler.
Matilda Maitland's series noticed the grim expressions etched upon their faces, a pallor reminiscent of witnessing death itself.
A question hung in the air about what caused the somber mood. The combined strength of an entire continent, a formidable force of 2 million, had united to eradicate the Demon King, humanity's greatest adversary. This likely represented the entirety of humanity's military might.
A silent contemplation lingered. How would they handle future challenges? Was the intention to cripple their nation for the sake of a single war?
Such was the depth of their hatred. A desperate plea was made, questioning if their majesty could truly not join them, the hope of escape shining faintly. The opportunity to flee existed solely because of a strategic placement within Laibach. A heartfelt apology was extended to Alfort. It seemed that his god, having provided surety, had gone bankrupt. It wasn't surety at all, but an oracle, though in essence, they were one and the same. A string of confusing words seemed to represent a leadership plan, following a series of objectives. A prophecy spoke of a future champion, one who would shatter the Hawkril pillar. It told of distortions, and of eventual redemption. The news was truly shocking and unexpected. Even after laying waste to half the temple, the surrounding waves embraced instead of condemned, hailing them as a savior. The shift was disorienting, making it hard to understand the present reality. A farewell was given, with blessings for the road ahead and a shared hope for a future reunion.
Magellan and Alaska both were wished safety on their journeys as they all departed.
Ceres was urged to leave, with a promise to await their return and the arrival of Lord Leifenhart. There was no way to know what the future held. A wish was expressed, that should fate turn for the worse, that a good person could be found to fill the space left behind. There was an unshakable resolve, a firm declaration of waiting. It was a certainty amidst the chaos, an anchor in the storm, a quiet promise that echoed with unspoken emotions. A steadfast belief of what was to come even if it did not seem to exist. Quiet promise that echoed with unspoken emotions. A steadfast belief of what was to come even if it did not seem to exist. Amidst the tranquil glow of the setting sun, two figures stood wrapped in quiet companionship. The soft breeze lifted strands of hair as they gazed out over the horizon, where flecks of light danced like stars awakening for the night. An arch framed them, casting long shadows that merged and mingled on the cool stone floor. In this serene moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, caught in the magic of their silent communion and the promise of what lay beyond the sunset. Hesitation crept in, a reluctance to place someone else above another. The choice was difficult, weighed down by conflicting loyalties and unspoken considerations. She was considered flawed, returned thrice for her lack of discipline. She seemed to be a problem. The elf's skill couldn't compensate for her difficult personality, which diminished her market value. She was too valuable to simply discard, so they used her in combat training to sharpen the other elves' skills, giving them practical experience. It was crucial for an elf to master the art of cutting through flesh to truly excel as a slayer. The question of whether the child would still be bought hung in the air, thick with anticipation. Despite everything, the answer came swiftly. Her tastes were indeed unusual. Lighting flared as prices were tallied, with the total coming to 300 gold coins. Only 300 gold coins seemed like an incredibly low price, but it was reasoned that she wasn't considered a proper product. There was even some doubt whether the transaction should proceed at all. A small voice broke the silence. Her new master was finally here. She must have been incredibly nervous to finally meet the person who bought her. Must have been incredibly nervous to finally meet the person who bought her. Looking at her, one could tell she had been through intense suffering. The experience marked her deeply. A suggestion was made to summon a priest to remove the blemishes. But the offer was immediately declined, instead requesting Lillian to use her healing abilities. The priority was her well-being. As they prepared to head out, concern was shown for the cold. The first order of business was buying clothes. A makeshift cover was offered, and the realization dawned that she didn't yet have a name. It was confirmed with a quiet yes. The question of a name arose: what about Ceres? The response was immediate. Understood, at cinch. There was a hopeful question, a tentative offering of a name. Ceres. The name was repeated, acknowledged, etched into memory with a promise: Ceres Valencia. The concept of family names was dismissed with a cold pragmatism, deemed unnecessary for a slave. Then, a shift, a suggestion, laced with veiled meaning. Valencia wasn't a family name, perhaps, but it should be. Introducing themselves, they offered names and affiliations. Leifenhart and Lillian, a cleric devoted to Philonen. Acknowledgements settled in the air, a silent agreement. A brief, truncated sound. An inquiry about a numbered slave, 148. The answer brought a sense of closure, and perhaps a touch of regret. Number 148 had already been sold. A surprised exclamation. She'd been sold just an hour ago? The air crackled with names: Beret, Sissyide, Diet, May, D, as if summoning answers. The possibility of repurchase was raised, then dismissed. It hadn't been Lord Beret who bought her, but a stranger. A man unknown. The inquiry turned to the buyer's identity. Frustration grew as it was revealed the transaction was in cash, leaving no further trace. Someone possessed a considerable sum, enough to purchase a slayer. Explanation followed, a justification for the sales terms. The slayer in question was deemed defective, thus commanding a lower price. The question hung in the air, a desperate plea for any detail. If only there was something to grasp, some distinguishing feature to conjure a mental image. All that came to mind was an immense figure, a man so large he'd be instantly recognizable upon sight.
Conjure a mental image.
All that came to mind was an immense figure, a man so large he'd be instantly recognizable upon sight.
A simple acknowledgement. The current attire would have to suffice for now.
A promise was made to acquire finer garments later, a commitment to providing better clothing in the future. Concern was voiced about hunger, but ultimately, the decision was left to the other's discretion.
An unexpected declaration followed, a request to abandon the formality of address. The title of master felt ill-fitting and unwanted. A wave of confusion washed over. Was this a prelude to being returned? A denial quickly followed, but the unease lingered. The odd behavior was perplexing.
He'd given his coat, adopted a hardened demeanor, and now he was even purchasing expensive items. It felt strange, as though being seen as a human woman. A desire bloomed for simple companionship, a plea to be considered an equal on this journey. The wish was voiced to be addressed by name instead of the title of master. The situation began to take shape. He seemed to be playing a role, lost in a world of old adventure stories. A label formed in thought, a single word, pervert. He seemed to be trying to embody a classic hero, embarking on a quest with a female warrior by his side. An agreement was made to play along, to humor this fantasy. The title Lord Leifenhart was offered, a deliberate step into his imagined world. A cynical thought crept in, a feeling of disillusionment. Underneath it all, humans were predictable. Pledantus Grace was known as the most popular restaurant in Zeppelin. Its fame stemmed from the concept of serving the goddess through kindness with food. The goddess pedantic, associated with earth and bounty, was ostensibly honored by the restaurant's practices. However, the notion of charging for this supposed kindness felt contradictory to some. The contrast was stark, especially considering that even the fill-in and merchant order profited through the beauty business. It was argued that business under the goddess of love and beauty didn't clash with doctrine. Still, the high prices, often quoted in numerous gold coins, couldn't be ignored, a point underscored by the absence of anything being offered gratis. A brief acknowledgement was given. The statement was followed by an inaudible murmur. A sense of wistful pondering hung in the air as the restaurant's appeal to someone specific was questioned. Memories surfaced of happier times, when visits here commemorated a first encounter. The nature of his connection with Ceres had undergone a transformation. Once, he might have been her savior, now, he was merely a customer. The weight of that single-word difference, savior versus buyer, felt immense, creating a palpable sense of regret. He wondered if perhaps their meeting had occurred prematurely. Despite the uncertainty, a hope flickered that his intentions would eventually be understood. For the moment, he decided, enough was enough. Enthusiastic assurances poured forth, touting the unparalleled quality and exclusivity of the store's products. The question, bubbling with anticipation, sought Ceres's opinion. Did anything catch her eye? A curious observation was made, noting a deviation from preferred weaponry. The rapier stood out, given the usual preference for a scimitar. A surprised gasp escaped as the realization dawned. How could he possibly know? A nervous oops followed, then a soft, impressed wow, acknowledging the inevitable. It all made sense. They say a warrior in their prime can discern a weapon merely by observing a person's hands. Still, it was unbelievable that the Mikhail weapon, something only ever seen, was now within reach. The thought seemed obvious, a rhetorical jab at the unlikelihood of a priest ever wielding a weapon in battle. It was a question tinged with mild condescension. 5. A stern atmosphere filled the air as they approached, the air thick with unspoken intentions. The group had been observed, assessed.
An inevitable conversation was about to begin.
Their voices were firm, brooking no argument, radiating an air of authority that suggested a formal inquiry was about to take place.
About to begin.
Their voices were firm, brooking no argument, radiating an air of authority that suggested a formal inquiry was about to take place. A. News had arrived. A noble, driven by desire and power, was now seeking to possess the female elf, turning her into a prized possession within a gilded cage. The information felt like a stone dropping into a still pond, the ripples of consequence already spreading. There was a challenge in the air, the question hanging heavy with defiance.
What was the true motive behind the information? What was the underlying purpose?
It was a challenge, daring the other person to reveal their hand.
The information? What was the underlying purpose?
It was a challenge, daring the other person to reveal their hand.
The offer was straightforward: hand over the elf, and riches would follow. A generous compensation, they promised.
The proposition went further, hinting at a trade, the elf for a slayer more to their liking. A form of payment was presented, but it was met with immediate rejection. They couldn't believe their offer was being turned down. Frustration began to surface. There was a clear statement of intent, a promise of generous compensation, and a hint of disbelief that it wasn't being understood. The refusal was equally blunt.
No thanks.
It was said with finality, leaving no room for negotiation.
A moment of assessment, a label of peculiarity.
The situation seemed unyielding, and a sense of resignation began to settle.
An observation was made: a certain attachment to the slave elf was evident.
There was a bond that defied simple transactions.
Confusion and disbelief erupted.
An absurd individual had just walked away, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and simmering anger.
The images are unclear. Roman's return was met with immediate questioning.
The failure was evident, empty-handed after the deal. The explanation poured out: the refusal to sell, regardless of the sum offered. A spoiled brat, disconnected from reality. The suggestion of force arose: beat him, take the payment.
But the presence of too many witnesses forced a different, more measured approach.
The situation had been handled accordingly, though the details remained unspoken. A plan began to formulate, a scheme to kidnap the slayer, to break the devastating news of the woman's death, and then, with calculated cruelty, offer double the payment. The relief at securing her for such a paltry sum was palpable, envisioning the money that would be saved.
It was a cost-effective approach, wasn't it?
The strategy seemed solid. There was a further order to bring along Sir Rutten, who had been growing complacent lately. It was time for the old man to prove his worth. Let him taste the field again, or be thrown away. It was time for the old man to prove his worth. Let him taste the field again, or be thrown away.
2,000 gold coins glittered under the light.
It was a considerable sum, more than anticipated, and yet, a crushing wave of disappointment washed over.
It would never be enough.
Not nearly enough to realize the grand dream of rebuilding the empire.
A new idea sparked, a thought blooming in the mind. What if, instead of burdened with the weight of these heavy coins, the money was invested? What opportunities lay hidden, waiting to be seized? Memories surfaced, hazy at first, then sharpening into focus.
Around this time, the neighboring kingdom of Romans, known for its agriculture, began to crumble under the weight of a devastating famine. Romans, once celebrated as the kingdom of agriculture, a land blessed with fertile fields and abundant harvests by the earth goddess Pedantic, had never considered preparing for famine, such confidence they had.
But when spring arrived, it brought with it a terrifying wave of starvation and death.
The famine unleashed unspeakable horrors, parents driven to consume their own children in desperate hunger. This was the perfect moment, a dark opportunity to start investing in grains. Several trade unions sprang to mind: Dolphin, Cannon, and Taiwan.
Dolphin, Karen Trade Assembly Union, L7 Taiwan Trade Union. However, one was immediately dismissed. There was no way any investment would be made with Dolphin.
The leader was a pervert who, in a previous life, had abused Ceres.
The thought alone was enough to shut that option down. The choice narrowed down to two trade unions.
After careful consideration, the third largest on the continent, specializing in grain trading and posing a challenge to Dolphin, seemed the most viable option.
The decision was made: the Taiwan Trade Union would be the focus. Frustration simmered.
Those blasted dolphins were at it again, dumping wheat and barley for next to nothing.
It was unethical. And yet, they were the second largest trade union on the continent. As leader of the Taiwan Trade Union, Volt felt the pressure mounting. Trade contacts were slipping away.
The immediate need was clear: payment forms had to be exchanged, and fast, to salvage the situation. A visitor had arrived, seeking to invest. The sum was laughable, a mere pittance that wouldn't even begin to address their problems.
It would only create more work. Dismissal was the only reasonable course of action.
A sudden shift.
The offer was 1,500 gold coins. What?
The investor was clear: all 1,500 gold coins were to be invested in grain commodities. The Kingdom of Romans was the target location.
The transaction was to occur next spring, at the barley harvest. Incredulity washed over the advisor. The Kingdom of Romans?
Selling grain to them was absurd, like selling soap to orcs.
They would never buy it.
There was a strange confidence that even orcs could adapt to soap, given time. The comment was brushed aside, an oddity best forgotten. The potential downside was acknowledged: if it failed, the entire burden would fall on the investor.
But if it succeeded? The trade union would only benefit. There was nothing to lose. Still, the advisor couldn't in good conscience recommend an investment destined for failure.
A reconsideration was strongly urged. A shift in tone.
If there was no interest, another trade union would be approached. A firm stance, indicating the investment was still viable.
The situation within the trade union was precarious, a storm gathering on the horizon. But with an injection of capital, it could weather the storm and even expand its reach. A proposal was laid out, suggesting an alternative investment strategy, hoping to sway the decision-maker towards a more beneficial course of action for the union.
Stubbornness seemed to be an inherent trait, unyielding even across lifetimes.
The decision was made, the tone firm, brooking no argument. It was their money, and they would decide its fate. The command was issued, impatient for the agreement to be finalized, the contract to be presented without delay.
A single caveat hung in the air: a binding restriction on the funds.
The money was to be used for its intended purpose, with no diversion of resources, no straying from the agreed-upon path. Confirmation was sought, a casual inquiry about a specific branch of the trade union. The question was directed towards a location within the grain kingdom, a delicate probe into existing connections. The affirmative came swiftly, confirming the recent establishment of a trade route extending into the northern territories. Details followed, mentioning the proximity of a branch to the magic tower of Delphi, nestled amongst the Satellidim Mountains.
The intricate web of trade routes was then outlined: Ronta Village, the gift of Strazand, the Grail Kingdom, and the distant Principate.
While a presence in the Holy Empire of Bashalan and the Green Kingdom was absent, a suggestion was made.
Travel through Delphi was necessary to reach the Rota branch.
A request was extended, seeking an investigation into an individual in that region, a favor asked in return for the investment. Assurance was given that upon receiving the details, contact would be made with the branch without delay. The opportunity was seized to gather information about Leifenhart, using the situation to their advantage. This situation created intrigue and a possible information advantage for them. To gather information about Leifenhart, using the situation to their advantage. This situation created intrigue and a possible information advantage for them.
All of it. Wow. Everything. The High Elves held a deep connection to the natural world, considering themselves the forest's original guardians.
Once, all elves thrived in perpetual bliss beneath the sheltering branches of Juvenheim, the world tree. Every creature was an ally, and every tree offered sustenance without end. Despite their current, wretched state after being driven away by humans, there was a fervent hope that Elia would one day guide them back to paradise. They were reminded that they descended from a great lineage. Above all, Elia had to remember her inherent worth. A blunt assessment was made regarding potential sale based solely on appearance. From that point forward, there was an emphasis on learning loyalty and manners, striving to embody the ideal of a virtuous elf. Ridicule poured down from the other elves, a constant barrage of mockery. The simple fact of being a pure-blooded high elf was enough to incite scorn. Thus, her sword became her only solace. As far back as memory stretched, the adults all carried swords, fighting with courage and honor until their last breath. She developed a fondness for the sword, a tangible reminder of parents who embodied dignity and strength. Time had blurred the edges of her memories, yet one phrase remained, nestled safely in the deepest corner of her heart, refusing to fade. It was a precious jewel she couldn't bear to lose. She stood amidst the cascading light, her thoughts a world away. Silent tears traced paths down her cheeks, each drop a whisper of unspoken sorrow. Her eyes shone with a mixture of vulnerability and resolve, framed by the gentle sway of her hair. Words hung in the air, unvoiced yet heavy with meaning, as she faced the solitude with quiet determination. Beloved daughter, even you must never forget your dignity. The words echoed with the weight of expectation and love, a guiding principle meant to shape her path. The intent was clear: hold your head high, no matter what life throws at you. Awe laced the voice as they marveled at the display of skill. How was it possible to move with such grace and power? They seemed truly impressed by the fighting style. The answer came simply, with handwork. It was a humble acknowledgement of the dedication and effort required to achieve such mastery. Frustration bubbled to the surface. The response was identical to someone else's. Was this curtness a common trait among martial artists? Trying to emulate the technique, they attempted to mimic the moves. Is this how you do it? A sudden exclamation marked an arrival. The focus shifted, the newcomer's presence immediately demanding attention. A beckoning call rang out, laced with a predatory eagerness. Come here, female elf. There was a palpable sense of someone being cornered. The promise hung in the air, thick with veiled threat. I'll bring you to your real master. This offer suggested hidden motives and a potential transfer of allegiance, perhaps unwilling. A desperate plea emerged. The desperation was palpable. Let me go. But those pleas seemingly fell on deaf ears, for another sentence echoed with intent. I'll take you to your real master, the words like a cold promise. The intention seemed clear: a forceful change of direction and loyalty was about to occur. Take you to your real master, the words like a cold promise. The intention seemed clear: a forceful change of direction and loyalty was about to occur. The scene shifted, hinting at a deeper dive into the history between them, specifically past relationship 31. The weight of unspoken memories hung heavy in the air. A muffled sound escaped, barely audible, a mere breath of acknowledgement or perhaps fear. The air crackled with tension. A booming voice shattered the tense quiet, laced with aggression and warning. It was a harsh challenge, declaring no help would arrive to rescue them from their predicament. A defiant voice cut through the air, frustration evident. There was an assertion that precautions had been taken, followed by a sharp reminder of their earlier agreement. Why were they provoking a conflict when the terms were already set? A furious outburst erupted, dripping with disdain. The speaker was provoked, seeing the other as nothing more than a disrespectful child deserving of their wrath, setting the stage for a confrontation. Nothing more than a disrespectful child deserving of their wrath, setting the stage for a confrontation. In a blur of motion, a warrior surges forward, her fierce determination cutting through the air like a blade. Energy crackles around her as the sky trembles, painting a backdrop of chaos. Her focus is unbreakable, each stride a testament to strength as she storms into battle, her hair catching the wind like a banner of defiance. The world seems to slow, capturing the moment she becomes a force of nature, unstoppable and fierce. In the heart of the city, chaos erupted as a fierce warrior charged forward, determination blazing in his eyes. His resolve cut through the air like a blade, rallying those behind him. Buildings blurred by in a dizzying rush, shadowed by the urgent shouts of comrades who followed closely, their hearts pounding in unison. The street became a battlefield of courage and tension, echoing the warrior's unwavering spirit and the clamor of impending confrontation. In the midst of chaos, as the world blurred around them, a determined figure surged forward, eyes fierce and focused. The air crackled with energy, tension simmering as a swift punch was about to land. Time seemed to slow, capturing the moment of impact, a decisive instant that would tilt the balance in an unseen struggle. The force of will and strength intertwined, painting a vivid tableau of action and urgency. In the midst of swirling chaos, the air crackled with tension. The figure, with a fierce resolve in their eyes, hovered mid-motion, a heartbeat away from a decisive action. Shadows danced around them, hinting at a collision of fates. The world seemed to freeze, capturing a slice of intense anticipation as the moment teetered on the brink of destiny. Amid the chaos, a fierce warrior darted forward, swift and unyielding as a storm. Blood painted the air around her, a testament to the ferocity of the encounter. Her eyes, fierce with determination, locked onto her adversaries as she advanced. With practiced precision, she wielded her blade, a blur of motion that left foes staggering in her wake. Each step was a testament to her resilience, the world around her a battlefield where her resolve shone brightest. The ground trembled beneath her, echoing the unyielding spirit driving her forward. There was only contempt as the pronouncement fell, an elf was nothing more than property, a slave to be used and discarded. A fierce, whispered assessment acknowledged the elf's power, a strength that far exceeded expectations. The air crackled with building fury. A desperate plea ascended, a fervent wish for cosmic justice. May the planets themselves unleash their divine fury upon those steeped in wickedness, crushing them beneath celestial judgment and obliterating their malevolent presence from the universe. Their divine fury upon those steeped in wickedness, crushing them beneath celestial judgment and obliterating their malevolent presence from the universe. A chilling confidence permeated the air. Snuffing out the life of an innocent pilgrim was child's play, an effortless act of cruelty. A surge of revulsion and anger choked the thought, a desperate, sputtering curse aimed at the despicable figure. A soothing reassurance cut through the tension, a promise of safety and protection offered in a moment of peril. The name series hung in the air, a whispered invocation or a desperate call. There was no hesitation, no obstacle standing in the way. An unwavering resolve filled the air, promising swift action and absolute certainty. The task ahead seemed clear, the path forward unburdened by doubt. Whatever challenge lay ahead, it would be met head-on, with unwavering determination. The task ahead seemed clear, the path forward unburdened by doubt. Whatever challenge lay ahead, it would be met head-on, with unwavering determination. The moment had arrived, the call to action echoing. It was time to fulfill the designated role, to step into the arena and embrace the task at hand with focused energy. All that remained was to get started. A swift affirmation followed, an acknowledgement of the command. Duty called and it would be answered without question, a pledge of obedience hanging in the air as the gears of action began to turn. Readiness was absolute. A pledge of obedience hanging in the air as the gears of action began to turn. Readiness was absolute. Galata, the warrior orc, was now set into motion, her purpose defined, to hunt down the elusive elf. The command resonated within her, fueling her pursuit, each step driven by the singular focus of capturing the target. Her mission was clear. A somber resignation washed over the scene, a quiet acceptance of an unavoidable destiny. There was a sense of regret, a hint of sorrow for the predetermined path, but also an understanding that some things were beyond control, that fate had already laid its course. Orcs, beings whose vocal cords were far more complex than those of humans, were rumored to have hidden skills. A wave of doubt followed after.
Could a being with such natural advantages really be stopped?
The challenge was daunting, a true test of strength and strategy. A stern order cut through the air, a demand for utmost care.
The directive was clear: preservation was paramount.
Whatever happened, one thing was clear: the target must emerge from the encounter unharmed, her safety the highest priority.
Reassurance was offered, a vow of nonviolence.
The intention was not to harm, but merely to restrain. A commitment was made, a guarantee that only capture was the goal, that the subject would be brought in without injury. Was made, a guarantee that only capture was the goal, that the subject would be brought in without injury. In the heart of the fray, a fierce warrior spun around. Sunlight glinted off their flowing hair as they moved with swift defiance, eyes narrowing with determination. The air crackled with energy, the ground seemed to pulse beneath their feet, and the world became a blur as they prepared to strike, undaunted by the chaos surrounding them.
In the heart of a sunlit courtyard, two warriors faced each other, their breaths steady, minds sharpened by the anticipation of battle.
The seasoned knight lunged forward, his sword carving through the air with unyielding determination. Across from him, the agile elf, with eyes gleaming like polished gold, braced herself, sensing the raw power in his strike. The ground beneath them held its breath, tiles bathed in the glow of morning light, waiting to witness the inevitable clash between strength and agility. Regret washed over as the realization struck: the scimitar, a trusted companion, had been left behind in the room. A wave of vulnerability crashed in, picturing the sleek, curved blade now out of reach, a silent sentinel abandoned. The consequences of this oversight could be dire, a nagging anxiety twisting in the pit of the stomach. Curved blade now out of reach, a silent sentinel abandoned. The consequences of this oversight could be dire, a nagging anxiety twisting in the pit of the stomach. A guttural sound escaped, a mere breath of frustration or perhaps a signal of something more.
The question exploded with incredulity and a simmering rage. Disbelief warred with fury at the pathetic spectacle unfolding. Struggling to subdue a single female elf?
The sheer incompetence of it all was infuriating. A defeated sigh foreshadowed a night of hunger. The pangs of disappointment resonated deeply, the vision of a satisfying dinner fading into a distant dream. It seemed tonight, the stomach would remain empty, a constant reminder of missed opportunity.
Dinner fading into a distant dream.
It seemed tonight, the stomach would remain empty, a constant reminder of missed opportunity. In the heart of the storm, two figures moved with purpose and intensity.
On one side, a fierce warrior with a piercing gaze, sweat trickling down his determined face.
On the other, a formidable adversary, looming large with fierce tusks and eyes full of resolve. The air crackled between them, a silent promise of the clash to come, each poised to meet fate head-on, unyielding. In the heart of battle, a hulking warrior surged forward, armor glinting under the sun's relentless gaze. His hammer swung with the intent to crush, muscles rippling with the promise of devastation. But beneath him, undeterred by the shadow of impending doom, a swift and determined figure darted low, blade poised like a whisper of defiance.
The clash of wills met in the charged air, a dance of survival and courage escalating towards an uncertain fate.
Amidst a rush of adrenaline, the warrior catapulted forward with fierce determination etched into their features. The ground shattered beneath their momentum, sending debris flying as if the earth itself made way for their resolve. Each stride was a potent blend of power and grace, hair like a wild flame caught in the wind. Eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked onto the horizon, promising victory and defiance in a world that dared to challenge their boundless spirit.
The air crackled with energy as they surged ahead, unstoppable and unwavering in their quest. Time seemed to slow, each second stretching into an eternity.
The weight of anticipation hung heavy in the air, thick with unspoken anxieties. A sense of foreboding crept in, painting the world in shades of gray as the seconds ticked by with excruciating slowness. Every breath felt like a countdown, each heartbeat echoing the impending unknown. Painting the world in shades of gray as the seconds ticked by with excruciating slowness. Every breath felt like a countdown, each heartbeat echoing the impending unknown.
Excruciating slowness.
Every breath felt like a countdown, each heartbeat echoing the impending unknown. In the heart of the battle, a warrior stands resolute, eyes gleaming with fierce determination. A colossal sword, an extension of their will, gleams with a sharp edge, slicing through the air with effortless grace. Time seems to slow as the warrior focuses, every breath synchronized with the rhythm of the fight. This moment, brimming with tension and strength, marks the turning point where resolve transforms into action, and the outcome hangs in the balance. A flicker of desperate realization sparked. The current strategy was clearly failing, achieving nothing, going nowhere. Frustration mounted with the understanding that evasion was no longer occurring at the current pace.
This wasn't working. A frustrated noise escaped, a guttural expression of annoyance and exasperation.
The sound reverberated, a sharp punctuation to the mounting tension. Something needed to change, and quickly, before things spiraled further out of control.
To the mounting tension.
Something needed to change, and quickly, before things spiraled further out of control. In a fierce clash beneath the azure sky, two formidable figures were locked in battle, their raw power sending shockwaves through the air.
With a defiant roar, the mighty warrior surged forward, eyes blazing with determination.
The very ground seemed to bend under the weight of his charge.
Towering above, the beast glared with primal fury, its gnashing teeth a testament to its relentless rage.
Light cascaded down, illuminating the fierce tableau, as both combatants prepared for a decisive confrontation. A chilling realization washed over, the near miss of a fatal blow lingering heavily.
A hair's breadth separated intention from consequence, a path narrowly diverted.
The weight of what could have been pressed down, a stark reminder of the razor's edge walked.
Success hinged on unwavering faith in another's expertise, a gamble placed on proven ability.
A crucial question hung in the air, a direct inquiry into the capacity to thwart a swift, airborne threat. The fate of the moment rested on the answer, the interception of a flying dagger paramount.
Confidence resonated, a firm belief in personal capability asserted with conviction.
There was little doubt in the ability to handle the situation, especially when considering the person who caused it. A derogatory term emphasized the low regard held for the instigator, fueling the determination to succeed.
A sharp command cut through the air, an instruction defied and now reiterated with force.
Patience wore thin, the expectation of obedience unmet, leading to a stern reminder of prior orders. Consequences loomed for the disregarded directive, the atmosphere thick with impending repercussions. Obedience unmet, leading to a stern reminder of prior orders. Consequences loomed for the disregarded directive, the atmosphere thick with impending repercussions. In the heart of a bustling cityscape, tension hung thick as two powerful figures confronted each other. The air shimmered ominously, and the sky crackled with unseen energy. A fierce determination radiated from a young warrior, eyes locked onto the enemy, a rare intensity burning like a wildfire within. Behind, a mysterious presence loomed, poised with a sense of control and authority.
Shadows danced around them, as if drawing power from the very earth itself.
A sword appeared, slicing through the atmosphere with purpose and grace, its edge gleaming against the sky. The scene was a tableau of defiance, an epic clash of willpower and destiny that promised great change.
In a whirlwind of adrenaline, the fierce warrior weaves through the chaos, her hair a cascade of determination.
A gleaming blade arcs above, threatening and relentless, but her eyes are set. With a swift, fluid motion, she raises her sword, anticipation crackling in the air around her. The world narrows to a single heartbeat, resonating with the clash of steel, as she stands unyielding, a beacon of resolve amidst the storm.
Surprise bubbled up, an exclamation expressing disbelief or sudden awareness. The utterance hung in the air, perhaps signaling a shift in the unfolding events or a newly recognized element within the scene. Emotion painted the sound, a mix of shock, realization, or dawning understanding.
A fervent plea unleashed, a call for righteous fury to descend upon despised adversaries. The words dripped with venom, a desperate wish to unleash a torrent of retribution upon those deemed vile.
Every syllable echoed with intense animosity, begging for destruction to rain down. To unleash a torrent of retribution upon those deemed vile. Every syllable echoed with intense animosity, begging for destruction to rain down.
In the heart of the bustling city, an unexpected spectacle unfolded against the dusky pink sky. A radiant figure, shimmering with an aura of mystery and power, descended.
3 onlookers stood beneath, captivated by the phenomenon.
Their eyes widened in awe and curiosity as the air shimmered with anticipation, the scene a blend of wonder and the unknown. The cityscape turned into a witness to the unfolding enigma, each moment thick with unspoken questions and a growing sense of impending magic. Even with the weight of the divine, there was still a struggle against the encroaching darkness. Power was a currency, carefully spent. Divine powers were a limited resource, meant to be used specifically against demons and the undead. It was enough to buy some time. A desperate plea to leave the area was quickly followed by a subdued confirmation. Milan was on someone's mind, the name hanging in the air like a question. What would happen next? The tension mounted, ready to burst with uncertainty. The mere whisper of a name held a great significance. The tension mounted, ready to burst with uncertainty. The mere whisper of a name held a great significance. A shadow darted across the tangled web of beams, feet landing with a soft thud that echoed in the stillness. Beneath, the ground seemed to ripple, the faint sound of strained metal whispering of untold stories. With the grace of a predator, the figure moved, each step calculated, tension hanging in the air as if the world held its breath. In the heart of a bustling city, under a cascade of dazzling light, a figure soared with effortless grace. The wind whipped around, carrying with it a sense of urgency and purpose as she leapt between rooftops, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Clutched securely in her embrace was a companion, whose wide eyes mirrored a mixture of awe and trust. Below, the cityscape blurred into a whirl of colors, a testament to the speed of their daring ascent. Shadows danced and whispered tales of their daring flight, leaving behind only whispers in the wind. Amidst the chaos of shattering glass, a figure burst forth into the cool evening air. Long hair whipped around fiercely as they curled in midair, ready for whatever was to come. The setting sun painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, casting dynamic shadows across their determined face. The scene was filled with urgency and the thrill of action, echoing the energy of someone breaking free against all odds. An urgent directive was given, a command to pursue without hesitation. The hunt was on, and failure was not an option. Confusion reigned as someone demanded an explanation of the unfolding chaos. There was disbelief and accusation in the inquiry about yet another failure, questioning the inability to capture even a seemingly weak female elf. It was admitted, grudgingly, that she possessed unexpected strength. It was strange. Even Delata seemed to be facing difficulties. An elf slayer typically wouldn't have so much trouble against a seasoned orc warrior. Something was clearly amiss in this fight. A need to prove worth surfaced. A question hung in the air, a silent inquiry about the missing targets. Where had they gone? The urgency to contribute was palpable. A direction was given, brief and to the point, over there. There wasn't much time to discuss, the chase was on, and every second mattered as the quarry moved further away. To discuss, the chase was on, and every second mattered as the quarry moved further away. In a whirlwind of motion, an ancient tree erupted with vibrant energy, its branches twisting and thrashing like wild serpents. A golden blade, fierce and radiant, sliced through the air with unwavering precision, catching the light as it raced through a shattered window, leaving a trail of shimmering sparks in its wake. The chaotic dance of nature and weapon forged a tumultuous symphony of power and purpose, echoing an untold story of conflict and resolve. The silence was heavy, laden with anticipation. He moved with incredible power, effortlessly clearing the building in a single bound. A realization dawned, so that was the strength of an Ida Iced. The display of power was both impressive and intimidating. A wave of nostalgia washed over. The situation felt like a twisted game of hide and seek, only the stakes were deadly. The thrill of the chase mixed with the grim reality of the hunt, making it a dangerous game. Of the chase mixed with the grim reality of the hunt, making it a dangerous game. There was a heavy pause, thick with unspoken tension and a shared understanding of the difficult path ahead. A somber atmosphere settled, each breath measured as the weight of responsibility pressed down, demanding careful consideration and strategic planning for the challenges to come. Settled, each breath measured as the weight of responsibility pressed down, demanding careful consideration and strategic planning for the challenges to come. It seemed like an eternity ago, but it was likely 5,004 days prior that a reduction studio existed. Studio E7 had been established on March 17 at 9:34 h.